Right, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting of the Gualala Municipal Advisory Council to order on this Wednesday, March 5th, 2025 at 6:04 p.m. There are no introductions. We'll move to approval of the agenda.
So we call for attendance, Councilmember Mayor,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis,
Here.
Councilmember Hess,
Here.
Chairman Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Hayward.
Here.
Good evening, Councilmember Newland.
Here.
And I am Dave Spot. We have four.
All right. We have one change on our agenda tonight. Out of respect to county staff who's been working a very long day anyway, we don't want to make it any longer, so we would like to recommend moving item 8.1, input regarding the determining the proposed Gualala Census District Place boundary under item 4, which is our correspondence and presentation. So I would like to make that recommended change. Any other changes, Dave?
Just to add a item of correspondence from Councilmember Finley today indicating her absence.
Oh, thank you. Okay, with those two changes, are there any other additions? If not, we'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as modified.
I move we accept the agenda as modified.
Do I hear a second? Second by Henry. We have a motion by Don, second by Henry. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, item 3, approval of the February 5th, 2025 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Bach, for putting those together. I hope everyone has received them and had a chance to review them. If there are no additions or corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve them at this time.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Lewis. Second by Mr. Hayward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I would like to go back to item 1 real quick, just to make note on the record that in the absence of Councilmember Finley this evening, Council Alternate Hayward will be sitting in as a regular member, as a regular council member this evening. So I wanted to make that announcement as well. And Ms. Finley does have an excused absence for tonight's meeting. Okay, item 4, everybody has probably seen the list of communications. So at this time, I would like to introduce Director Krog and her staff. This is the carryover item from our last meeting regarding input on determining the proposed Gualala Census Designated Place boundary. Just a bit of history for those that are watching out in the television land. Back in 2023, our community had two events that was one, the refurbishment of Bauer Park, so it required the closure of it at that time for safety reasons. And the other in February 2023 was the devastating fire of the Gualala Community Center. In both cases, both the county and the local Gualala Community Center board looked for alternate funding sources outside of the area, both state and federal. At that point in time, we realized and were notified that Gualala is not a census tract community and was actually a census block community, and we were not eligible for any state or federal grants. So we went to the board and asked for their assistance to be reclassified as a census tract community, knowing that the process requires the submittal of the application by the county in 2025, be reviewed and approved. And if I'm not mistaken, unless Director Koger staff have a different added information, this would take effect for the 2030 census. So with that, and I would like to, point of privilege, I would like to thank Mr. Ford for his due diligence in getting the maps and all the excellent work back to us in a very timely manner that we were not only able to review, but that we were also able to post on our website for the community to see as well. So, Mr. Ford, thank you very much for your working with us and your timely response to all of our questions. At this time, I would like to introduce Director Krog. Thank you for joining us. Glad you're not driving in the rain. And please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Julia Krog, Planning and Building Services Director. And Russ Ford is unable to be here tonight. He sends his regrets, but I will be taking his place and taking any comments that you may have on the revised mapping that Mr. Ford sent to you all. So as was stated, really we're looking for any sort of input from both the public and from the Municipal Advisory Council members on what should be the proposed boundaries for the census designated place. And this will allow for our Information Services Department to submit the request in a timely manner. And I was just corresponding with them last week and understand that the application period has just recently opened and remains open until May, but we're hoping that we can get some additional comments or any, sort of final recommendations. So that way we can go ahead and move forward with submitting that request to the Census Bureau.
Okay. I'll open it up. Well, first, anybody from the public have any comments? Or none? Okay, I'll close public comments and bring it back to us. We all received the maps. Any comments, suggestions, recommendations that we can provide staff to move forward with the application? Dave?
Let's try to make it as straightforward as possible for the Census Bureau to respond to our request. And to the extent that we can stick within current boundaries that are on the map, census mapping, that's good for us. But I'd also like to ask that we make some adjustments that, notwithstanding the current census boundary ones for block and block groups and census tract related to Gualala, that the boundary be as coterminous with the current GMAC and then it follows some of the geographic boundaries currently suggested. So essentially, it's the larger of those three intersects. What that will do is it will help pick up some properties on the north side of Iverson that really ought to be part of GMAC consideration. Port side, land use jurisdiction or land use considerations are it's pretty much right. And then on the east side, pick up some more of the watershed.
Okay. Any other comments, suggestions, Dan?
Yeah, I concur with what Mr. Peck has said. I know people who live on like Moonrise on the far side of the stage are very concerned with what goes on in our area here and our active members of the community. And we want to see them like that.
Henry, do you have anything?
No, I would agree with both of those. I feel like that the border that goes out towards the rivers wouldn't have made sense to me.
Okay. Don?
I think Dave summed it up pretty well, so concurrence with him.
Robert?
I'm in favor of keeping it as close to the jurisdictional boundary of GMAC. I think one of the reasons why GMAC boundaries were picked as they were way back when was it kind of coincided with the South Coast Fire District boundaries, and it included complete parcels. I was looking at some of the maps, and the gentleman from the county suggested maybe going along rivers, the North Fork and things like that. I can see that point too, but, I think it needs to be more definitive as far as going along parcel boundary lines. So that would be what we have pretty much with our jurisdictional map for
Okay.
GMAC. That's my opinion.
Zach?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that. I think that, representation of the geographical boundary is important because you're gonna get a lot more homes that way and lots of people that do most of their shopping and, lots of work in Gualala, more so part of that area than say, the Point Arena threshold once you get as far down as, Eureka Hill. But yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that's been said. I have nothing to add.
I was looking at the great maps that Mr. Ford presented. And looking at the one that represents, I got to find it up, the census block designations. I noticed that it extends a little further. Do you have those maps, Don?
Yeah.
I noticed at the north end through Iverson, it extends beyond the Iverson properties and extends some open space as well. And so I'm not sure if that would allow future development, if that would fall under our sphere of influence. So that.
Kevin, which map would you like?
It's one that says census blocks.
GCDP.
But I like the fact that we are including the subdivisions around Iverson Place, Iverson Cove, because those are not included in LAFCO's boundary lines for GMACs or for South Coast Fire Protection District. So it's nice that we're including them in our sphere of influence, at least in regards to the census tract. If you'll notice,
You mean Iverson Landing subdivision, I think, right?
well, if
On
you're
the
looking at
north side.
but most of the designations kind of follow this line, loop around the development, and then go around the point. This one here, then further toward Scooter Gulch. There, and thanking to all the little dots and show where all the homes are, there really isn't any development there. I don't know if there can be any development there, but would it be a problem to add that into our sphere of influence?
Large property.
There are there's several large projects in that additional area, which is why I'm attracted to it. There is some development potential there and some resource management. Really makes sense if we consider the geographic boundaries that make the most sense for the South Coast. Schooner Gulch is a reasonable dividing line. It seems more reasonable.
And I like the fact that he kind of scored in that little area where A for bay.
Yep.
Yep. As we track.
The other thing is
That has to be for the community.
the other thing that additional area to the north does, it puts GMAC more clearly into an advisory position on California Coastal Trail, which will be extended northward toward the Schooner Gulch State Beach within the next year or two. And I think it'd be good for us to have a place at the table, if there is one, for that issue.
Yeah, good point. And not to mention, it maybe helps with more protection for the headwaters of Fern Gulch too. So that is kind of important up there.
Yes, exactly. Anyway,
So that, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would also, on that, I mean, I do kind of wonder why, like, whether the boundary would be cleaner if it went along Shingle Mill Gulch and Schooner Gulch, as opposed to there being sort of that little gap between the line as drawn on the census map and actual Schooner Gulch. I mean, I don't know how much it matters. There's only a couple of developments.
So you're saying follow the blue line for Schooner Gulch and
Shingle Mill, is
Shingle
that
Mill.
the southern of the three branches there.
okay, and Shingle Mill?
I mean, I don't know if there's a reason why it doesn't do that.
I
Presumably,
can comment, the reason it doesn't do it right now is just that's how the current census blocks are laid out. So those areas are just in a different census block.
oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't feel strongly. I'm probably just reacting to the aesthetics of the map. If there's a reason for that, then I will defer to that reason.
As I recall, there's like one guy that lives on the south side of Schooner Gulch along there. He's been crossing the gulch on a rope since January before last.
Killer spot.
so then I guess the question is, do we want to recommend to the county that we follow the map that is drawn out with the designated census blocks, which includes that area north, but not all the way to Schooner Gulch? I think it looks clean and it's clearly defined with the census block areas.
Yeah.
So if that's would be the preference of the council, I would entertain a motion to recommend to the county that we use the census block map as our boundary lines for GMAC.
Can I make the motion?
You can.
I'd like to move that we recommend that the county propose that the census designated place boundary for Gualala encompass the current census tract lines south of Schooner Gulch, the current GMAC boundary area, as well as the geographic area that Russ Ford showed us earlier, and it'd be the largest of the intersection of those three images. And the idea here is we're picking up geographic boundaries, which is in the rule set. We're maintaining the GMAC mapping area with GMAC comment area presently found, and then extending up to the extent of the existing designated census lines. So it's those three elements.
So would that follow the same?
It's going to be pretty close to that. There'll be some minor variations, I think, enlarging slightly in some locations.
Yeah, like,
You'd have to do an intersect of the polygons. But
Yeah.
they'll be minor.
Hang on.
yeah, it looks like it would, yeah, the biggest one that jumps out to me is, the GMAC boundary, picks up a decent chunk north of Fish Rock and, east of, Old State. And actually dips across whatever that river is. It's South Fork of the Garcia, maybe. So, again, there's not a lot of development up there. It would, I think in terms of parcels, it would really only add, I don't know, 3 to 5 parcels, maybe, that looks like. Or, sorry, 3 to 5 developments.
It includes a lot of that area. I think.
Or 2 even, actually.
Oh, it's at the census blocks, yeah. So essentially what will happen is that the census blocks right now on the east side follow the north fork of the Gualala River, whereas the GMAC boundary doesn't go all the way down into the ravine.
Actually, that's the Little North Fork. Yeah.
Little North Fork, correct. And then there's the GMAC boundary presently goes off to the east following the Fish Rock Road more than the census boundary does. And then I think the third intersect, which would be the geographic map that Ford put together, might include some other minor adjustments. They'll look a little bit more like the census map in the southeast.
Will it remove some of our boundary here though? But that,
My suggestion is we take the largest of the three.
I see.
We take those, and they're both, I think, reasonable. There's a rationale for each of them, but that we asked, because we're an advisory body attempting to represent the community in the South Coast, that we be inclusive rather than exclusive.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Sorry, point of order before we vote on that. Do we feel like this would be an appropriate time to accept public comment?
Right. Well, what I'll just do the motion in a second, then we'll go to public comment before we vote.
Oh, okay.
Because if we don't have a second, then it's a moot point.
I can make a second.
So we have a second by Robert. Okay, public comment, John?
Yes, couple things.
have some infrastructure. Excuse me, can we move the microphone, close to the table so we can hear? Thank you.
Well, I'm only getting even because I can't hear you guys. You can't hear me. There we go. Anyway, the north end of that census boundary has some infrastructure, and including the coast landfill down at Little North Fork, which is on the west side of Little North Fork, and including the Southwest Fire Protection District's house for their fire department on the north side of that road. And you have not indicated by your description that you were taking in any of those parcels. So we have the fire department, we have the dumps, and we have a group of homes off of the old still used airport up there. And I don't know if you meant to include the airport or not. I think there's 7 or 8 homes up there.
I believe the airport is included on that map.
Look at all the little dots there, I don't think it is. See the dots that are just beyond that curve and black curve there?
Nothing north of Ireton.
That's where that air strip is that John's talking about.
All the dots out there on the ridge that's white, those are along that airport. And of course, the firehouse is right there at the foot of that Fort Denwell cutoff.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you're missing some.
That
I mean,
way,
if you're going to use South Coast Fire District's boundary, hopefully you include their building.
well, it looks like it is in GCS and GMAC boundary map.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, that's a big black line.
I just did large.
Disseminate.
Yeah, GMAC boundary, looks like it includes the fire.
Can you put up the GMAC boundary?
You're talking about the.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the dump, yeah, excuse me.
Okay, we're gonna have Don bring up the GMAC boundary. And I do realize that it would be ideal to include every existing parcel right now, but I think in designating the boundaries, I don't know if we're gonna be able to
That's the one on.
do
Fish Rock.
Yeah.
basically a circuitous line that weaves in and out to try and include every parcel, every home that's out there. But I think the intent of the census is just to really get a clearly defined area of residential and commercial development that can be included in a census tract designation for our community and give us the demographics and the geographical issues that we have here, and not necessarily try and get every single home. But that's just my thought.
Yeah.
Thanks, John, for your comment.
Yeah, just to clarify, that looks like the GMAC boundary does include the firehouse, does not include the airport, does not include the transfer station.
Okay, so- okay. So you can see how it kind of comes in. It doesn't include a lot of the north end, and that's what one of the census block map includes more of this area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, all the way to the river.
And it includes more of the area up here. My question is, the council committee for staff. Are we fine with the designation right now on the census block area in this area? The east? Yes, no? Okay. So my other question is, should we ask them to map line designation, including single mill, Scooter Gulf and down? that'll be a clearly defined boundary.
If-
Or we can see if maybe kind of golf down.
You know, if you want a geographic feature that looks like the airport John was talking about, you go here, go,
Right.
and then up to the river.
Yeah.
And that would capture that. Yeah. We're not trying to be exclusive, but we need to have a simple rule that always you have
And apologies for interrupting. I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing the commentary.
What I just said, we want to go with a rule set that Census Bureau seems to be comfortable with and adept at doing, and so geographic features seem to be a helpful way to draw a line. So Ms. Krog, the latest concept would be to extend the northern boundary up to Schooner Gulch, follow the blue line upstream, inclusive of Hall Gulch, and then come across to 10-mile cutoff and head south toward the existing GMAC boundary and the intersects with the existing census line. I can describe that in writing and transmit that to you. Would the council like me to amend my motion accordingly? Okay. So I'd like to move that we request that the county propose to the Census Bureau a Gualala Designated Place boundary that is the larger intersect of the existing census lines related to this South Coast area as shown to us by Planner Ford, the existing GMAC boundary area, and the concept, the geographic boundary concept map that Planner Ford shared with us earlier, with the addition of the land area south of Schooner Gulch, Hall Gulch, and across to the 10-mile cutoff area heading south for their intersection with those three map boundaries. Okay?
Everybody understand the motion?
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Zach. Any discussion?
An obnoxious amendment. I think technically it would probably be the union rather than the intersection.
Excuse me?
Technically, it'd probably be the union rather than the intersection. I think.
Fine.
Yeah. Sorry. I guess I would ask Ms. Krog, do you see any objection to that idea as proposed by Dave just now?
No, I think, we're going to make an application to the Census Bureau, and if they come back with any comments or concerns, because I do understand they like to have some readily identifiable, features for the Census Bureau staff that may be working on this. So I think actually the amendment to go up to Schooner Gulch and Hall Gulch is a good one. And then with the intersection, I think the only thing that I could see them being a little bit concerned about are some of the big jogs that you have in the GMAC boundary. But, I think we'll start with making an application with the union of all of those maps with the amendment to expand that northern border just ever so slightly, and start there. And if they come back with any concerns or comments, then we can come back through the MAC and have that conversation.
All right.
Great. And then my only other question, I know the South Coast transfer station was mentioned. That's not included in any of the maps that we're talking about. That doesn't seem like a priority to me. I don't know if anyone.
Do we need it?
What?
Do we need it included?
I don't think that that's particularly relevant to the place as we would designate, but I just wanted to call it out.
Or the function of a census.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's not going to be counted.
Yeah, exactly.
Chair, we do have somebody on Zoom who I
Yeah.
believe would like to make a public comment.
Sure.
Doreen Cronin.
Oh, yeah. Kareem.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I think I jumped in and kind of on the middle. This is my second meeting, so forgive me for maybe not being fully informed on this. I guess have a question. because becoming a census designated area does not mean we're becoming incorporated. And how does becoming designated impact, future potential, if the community ever wanted to incorporate, how would this census designation impact that?
Um,
Before I can,
I can weigh in, but Director Krog, you want to weigh in first, or why don't you weigh in if you have any information, then I can follow up.
Sure. I really don't think that it impacts that ability if to incorporate, if that was so desired in the future. Incorporation is a very different process from being designated as a census designated place. And so, the incorporation process is quite a bit more involved. You're really mapping out what those boundaries are that are appropriate for that incorporation, and that may or may not align with the census designated place.
okay, I think I needed that information before I could form an informed opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? We have a motion by Davis, second by Zach. It should have been Henry because you seconded the last one. Sorry about that. We have a motion second on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Director, and to your staff for all the hard work you did, and we look forward to staying in contact with Mr. Ford.
Thank you very much for moving me up on the agenda, for facilitating this discussion. And I will send you all, or I'll have Russ actually send you all a copy of that final map showing the union of the boundaries, so you know what got submitted to the Census Bureau. So, and then we'll move forward with that process, and I, of course, can provide you an update as we move through that application process.
All right. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Have a great evening. Okay. I think that went well, and I think by adjusting it to the blue line really makes it clean, and it will be easy for staff and the Census Bureau to kind of look at our boundary lines. And to add on to Corinne's question, that is one of the things that LAFCO looks at, is existing boundary lines when they're considering either an annex or an incorporation. So these boundary lines would be one of the things considered by LAFCO should anybody wish to proceed with the idea of an incorporation or the development of a special district. So, moving on. Public comments. A maximum of 3 minutes is reserved for members of the public to address the Gualala Municipal Advisory Council on items not listed on the agenda, and the total time for public input on a particular issue is limited to 20 minutes. The council is prohibited from discussing or acting on matters not on the agenda, but may briefly respond or ask a question for clarification. John, and Corinne, you guys are the only two public, so do you have any comments, John?
Yes, I think on Friday evening, there was an incident with a third life getting SUV. And the operator severely, I see so many abuses of the law. I think that hopefully this is a with a piece of equipment that is not registered to drive on the road, but they on the market are pretty difficult to deal with unless people are aware to provide think we can pick it up. And obviously, some of the comments, coming in on the transportation side of, the, MPOC, doing a new transportation plan that's due in, a month or so, and through 26. That there's really places we can walk. And notoriously dangerous. And I don't think we should be subject to that much danger. I mean, it would hurt me something horribly. If one of my crew or myself or family were to hit something that was just not there. And I don't care how you look at it. It's after it's happened. Those kinds of things can be quite serious if something does happen. So, what are you guys going to do to try to encourage PHP County to try to build that up and maybe areas along the side of the river? Or, and I know that you guys have seen that. I'm doing that extreme capital. That doesn't all be in the same spot because they can't get through. Things can be
We thank you for that. Yeah, I'm sure your observations are not. Hey, music. Yeah, I'm sure your observations are not unique. There's a lot of people that I'm hearing from the community that have concerns with our area. So, unfortunately, I'll be able to ask a couple of questions to our resident deputy when he gives his report. And but yes, I think it's something that as long as we stay in contact with the county and our law enforcement and our resident deputy, let them know what's going on, because we are their eyes and ears, and we can let them know what's going on. So I appreciate you coming tonight. Robert?
Brief response to that too. Somebody regularly has not a side-by-side is what like a four-wheeler.
Yeah, it's okay for
On a dirt bike or something like that. I think they come off of your property and then they go racing down Highway 1, doing a wheelie the whole stretch of Highway 1. It's a little bit insane to me. But they're there revving their engine and on one wheel going the whole highway. I see it often from my office. It's nuts. And that's downtown where people are walking and stuff, you know.
If they could be slowed down and educated instead of chastised badly,
Yeah.
I think maybe we're in better shape. And of course, anytime they can find a location where I think spaces up on loose material, finding a bit of that would be one.
Do you have any questions or comments for us?
Only that I couldn't hear John speaking and what the comment was, other than something about a four-wheeler.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. We need to make sure we move the microphone over. Any other public comments? Hearing none. Chris, you're up. And for those that don't know, this is Chris McNally. He is our resident deputy, with Mendocino County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, yeah. Excuse me. So I've got some stats for you guys for February. From Mendocino South, just to keep you guys kind of apprised of what goes on the whole thing, there was 259 calls for service. So, you know, there's one guy on per shift during that time, so basically break that between 4 guys. So 259 calls for the month.
Is
From
that up or down?
Mendocino City South. I'm new. It's more than where I came from per deputy call per month.
Yeah.
I imagine that it's probably pretty regular. I imagine this summer, we're probably gonna be looking at 400.
Yeah.
Right? And one thing you guys spoke about with motorcycles and bicycles and everything else is gonna be insane. During that time. You know, one of the things that we're not used to is we pulled out on the road the other day behind like 12 bicycles. And sat behind 12 bicycles for about 4 miles. I think we discussed today that actually for us, running the ridge road, it's probably gonna be easier getting between Gualala and Iverson during the high months anyway. But you guys, Gualala came in number 2 for stats at 59. Mendocino was 85 calls. So it is busy down here. It's busier than the other areas. You know, the lowest area I had 3 calls in Comchi. You know, we just get part of Comchi split up between 2 districts basically. We had 2 welfare checks, 1 vandalism reported, 1 threats call taken, 3 reports of suspicious activity, 6 traffic stops. You know, mainly what I've been hearing lately is, you know, warnings for stop signs, warnings for stuff like that. We try and, at the sheriff's office, we try and educate and not cost folks via the ticket. Sometimes you have to understand that writing a ticket is the only way that some folks are gonna understand if they can't do that again. If you hit them in the pocketbook, right? Security checks, 25. And what a security check is when I go in, I go into like Bower Park and do a check in Bower Park, and I let dispatch know that I've done a security check in Bower Park or the airport, or, you know, the Frisbee Park off of Ocean Ridge Road, that sort of thing. So, 1 mental health check, 4 follow-ups on cases. We normally have several cases going at once down here that we're doing follow-up on, and we'll just let dispatch know once in a while, hey, I'll be out of this area on follow-up. And sometimes they log it as an investigation. It's usually just follow-up. There's no specific. 2 frauds, reported frauds. I'm working a check fraud case right now. I think the other one was an attempt at identity theft that turned out to be nothing. 2 domestic disputes, 1 disturbance, just the subject being loud and neighbors were upset. So somebody went and knocked on the door and said, hey, we all have to live here. Could you take it down? About 4 offers. It was great for everybody. A couple civil situations. There's a lot of landlord tenant disputes in this area, right? Any rental at one time or another, when you evict somebody, you're gonna have a problem with your tenant. Sometimes tenants call and say that the landlord's not fixing something, and they call us in to try and mediate it. One report of camping in an area they weren't supposed to be camping. 1 attempt to contact, which actually could have fallen in the welfare check section. Folks will call if you know how the cell service is sketchy here at best. Sometimes you can't get a hold of somebody for 3 days and they're worried about their health because of their age or other issues, and they call us to go knock on the door and say, hey, you need to call in marriage. Kind of thing like that. And 5 911 hang-ups. So recently I've been getting a lot of pocket dials again. It seems to be a theme for me. I had a guy the other day, I'm like, hey, you know, you dialed 911. He's like, no, I didn't. He pulled out his phone. It was an open 911 line on his phone in his pocket. So it's really not a big deal. We're happy to come. I would rather come for it being nothing or something small than something bad. So, did you guys have any questions or comments about that?
I have one question. I had a resident ask me a question. I couldn't answer it.
Okay.
Going up Pacific Woods, can you find out what the speed limit is going up that road? They said they thought it was posted 40.
It is 40.
Is it 40?
It is, but it isn't. That's, you know, the posted, we can do the posted enforcement.
Yeah.
But we have to find out if that's been surveyed. I'm not a traffic guy. I'm a county cop, and my main job is not traffic.
Yeah.
We're domestic law enforcement. It's my understanding that those all have to be surveyed for speed before they can just set.
Mhm.
a limit, like you just can't set a 25-mile-an-hour zone somewhere unless it's been surveyed.
Right.
So, I couldn't tell you, it's
Okay,
tough
but
to
it-
enforce. I don't run radar,
Sure.
right? So I'm gonna have to go to court and testify to how I can tell a car is going by, how fast they are. I mean, I'm pretty close.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 out of 5 times may not be good enough to get a conviction though, right? And if I can judge, 10 cars, 9 out of 10 cars by their speed as they go by, it's actually pretty tough to do. But yeah, so I couldn't tell you for sure, and I don't know what's enforceable, right, on some of that stuff.
Yeah, their concern was, and Don, you live there, so you could, shed some light on. They said that the speed limit has been increased, that it was 35 for a while, and then it got bumped to 40. I don't know, I don't live on Pacific Woods, but anyway, there's a lot of residents on Pacific Woods, and they were concerned that 40 is kind of a high speed to be running through a residential area.
I agree. I'm not an expert and I'm not speaking on behalf of the sheriff's office.
Sure.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I agree that that's fast. There's a lot of speed through here. I mean, the bridge itself,
Mhm.
folks will run 10 miles to Iverson to the old stage to get across that way to avoid the traffic, and they're moving a lot of speed through there. I'm spending quite a bit of time with them. If you guys have seen me up and about,
Yeah.
I'm up in there now, and the folks slow down when they see me, but they also know that I'm either here or Mendocino or Elk or somewhere else, running. They see me through an area, they know that I might not be back in that area very often. I'd like to actually hit an area and then come back about 20 minutes later, and people are like, hey, you were just here, right? They're like, what the heck, you were just here. So I have to kind of chop it up and keep it,
Mhm.
I try not to be too regular as to where I'm gonna be,
Okay.
so. Yes, sir.
Yeah, speaking about the issue of Pacific Woods Road, I talked to some neighbors around too, who also think that 40-mile-an-hour speed limit is too high. There are a lot of curves in that road, and there have been several accidents over the last couple of years
I would agree.
where people have crashed, and flipped their trucks and stuff when they're on a curve. Now, maybe there was alcohol involved. I don't know exactly, but I do think 40 miles an hour is too fast. And even on some of the curves, there's no sign to slow down.
Right.
There's a sign that says it's a curve, and
Right.
that's it. So
And-
you have to know
Right,
to slow
and,
down.
and the road department would be the appropriate, and I'm not trying to pass the buck. I can't just put up a road sign, it has to be done through, and then there's folks who are way higher on the food chain than I am within the road department and
Right.
county works.
It's a county road, so. yeah.
Right, it's a county road.
Okay.
But the other question I have is, okay, if you're not really equipped with radar or anything to sight people who speed, then who is? And then what?
Right.
Who-
So.
Who would ever enforce a speed limit on that road?
On a county road, and that's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
Right, so, counties that have incorporated cities, normally some of those counties have radar. Counties over a certain population, and I don't wanna quote the population and have it wrong, because I don't have it on the tip of my tongue right now, I have to look it up. They can have radar, otherwise cities and CHP are about the only agencies that have radar. CHP does run radar. It's not uncommon for CHP to handle traffic stuff in county areas. Right,
They can do it.
well, they're close to a lot of it, right? But it's tough. They're like we are. There's one CHP officer for many, many, many miles here.
Yeah.
And the only way that they're gonna know there's a problem is if we're letting them know. I can make a presence and, I'm up and down. I'm up Pacific Woods a couple times a week myself. I notice the speed. You have to realize that it's a lot of it's local folks too that are trying to avoid the highway or trying to avoid law enforcement because they may have just left a place and had a couple drinks at dinner, right? So it's a tough one,
Yeah.
right? Being with the sheriff's office, we're kind of a catch-all, right? We fix everything, and that's what we do. We're kind of a Swiss Army knife, right? You'll put us out there for anything needed, and we're happy to do it. There's just some things that I don't have the authority or the ability to do.
Yeah, I understand, but one final comment is, it's not, Pacific Woods Road not only has a speed problem for certain drivers, but also a noise problem. I mean, there are people with incredibly loud mufflers that drive up and down that road, sometimes late at night, they wake everybody up if they're asleep. So, traffic is a problem in that neighborhood.
Right, at my old jurisdiction, I wrote one ticket for a trap muffler, like the trap style muffler that you would have like on little Subarus or anything else. And I lost that case because I'm not an expert on muffler. So I wrote the ticket, he showed up in court, he had the documentation that showed that I was wrong. And it was a loud muffler, it was, you know, it was an obnoxious muffler, and he was legal, so. There's a certain decibel level that they can be, right? And unfortunately, I'm not an expert in that. That would also be like a CHP. I mean, even the loud music, you can write a ticket if it's over 50 feet, but that's a tough ticket to win as an officer, right? So the best thing we can do sometimes is make a presence and, you know, knock on their window and say, hey, you're annoying your neighbors. You know, could you keep it down from here? And we try, you know. Yes, sir.
So, if, residents did want to request like a speed trap on Pacific Woods happen at some point, like is there?
Speed traps are actually illegal. They're actually illegal in the state of California for law enforcement to set up a trap, if you will. Normally, I wanted to get the.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks, there's a lot of folks listening out here and I don't want to.
Fair enough.
Okay, so, you know, the main thing is, you know, I've seen, they have like the radar trailers that they can put up. I don't know if we have any at the sheriff's office. I have not asked for one. That normally, you know, we would warn folks. And CHP will do that too before they're gonna do like a heavy enforcement in an area. They'll set that out there and it'll remind you, hey, you're speeding, hey, you're speeding, hey, you're speeding. And then the next day there's a black and white car sitting there saying, hey, you're speeding.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes it's not fun for the community, but sometimes that's the only way. You know, my recommendation would be to contact somebody at the county roads department and find out if the roads have been surveyed and what the actual situation is, because I don't know why they would raise or drop a speed limit.
Sure.
Right, I would prefer a residential area be 25, but I'm not king for a day, so.
Dan?
Yeah, there's also the aggravating factor in the service of that road.
Right,
Yes.
right,
And that's when those people lose their grip on the road and end up in somebody's front yard.
right, especially with the wet roads here, and that's a thing. Yeah, and I don't know whether that's just the nature of the soil here underneath the roads, but I've noticed that myself, that even, we drove part of 10 Mile today to see if it was faster to get to Point Arena than it would be to go up one today, and the speed that we had to drive that part of 10 Mile because it was rough actually slowed us down. It's actually faster for me to run the kids up the other way. Until probably there's gonna be 30 bicycles that I'll be behind one that time in the morning from summer.
Yeah, the object being to arrive with as many teeth as you can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right, and make sure the lid is tight on your coffee cup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the other factor on speeding on a road like that is California has a reasonable and prudent speed regulations are in the motor vehicle code. So if they're just being stupid fast, that can also be applied even if it's never been posted, even if it's unposted, it's 55 miles an hour. It's really stupid to do that.
Right, I think what he's explaining to you folks is that people can actually be cited for like driving faster than considered safe for road conditions. Like say if it's snowing and you're driving faster, and if you slid and hit somebody in front of you, they're gonna go, well, obviously you were driving faster than the conditions because you slid into something in front of you. Yeah, that's something that's kind of outside my purview. You know, you have to be kind of an expert and trained on that sort of thing to be able to articulate that in court. You know, and the main thing is we're not out here to violate folks' rights, and anything that I do, I have to be able to articulate the court of law, or I'm not gonna be doing it very long. So it's a tough go on things like that. So.
John, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Could you step up so they can hear you?
Speaker.
Right, right.
So I'm aware of, I believe, 2 studies that have been done down here on the south coast. And I think one was Old Stage. I think Mary might have remembered that. Robert might have remembered that. But I don't think any of the other of you have been here through that cycle of surveys. And the other one was Pacific Woods, I believe. And in that process, they take a certain percentile of the speed at which vehicles are going. That's where they aim for the new speed limit. And if they're going too fast, it may turn out that we made a
Raises
mistake.
the average.
This goes down.
It used to be 35.
And I think that did happen with one of those, so they decided not to change it. So anyway, that's all I have on it. I know there's information out there, and I'm sure between Howard Shield and some of the other county agencies probably know that those studies have been done, and there's results back in a file someplace.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. McNally? If not, we'll let them go to dinner.
Have a great dinner.
Appreciate it, guys. As always,
Enjoy your dinner.
give me a shout if you need something. You're not bugging me. You know, I get texts on my work phone all the time about what's going on and so forth. So if you guys need anything, please let me know, because I'm not everywhere and I can't see everything. And I appreciate that you guys understand that.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of have a big area here and we're off in the woods a lot. So again, I appreciate your time, and if you guys need something, let us know.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, moving on. Item 7. 7.1, we're here to look at the boundary line adjustment for Perry Gottesfeld, sorry. Boundary line 2024-0026. Councilmember Schrock was the council member that took on that assignment. So Dave, you're up, and I see Mr. Gottesfeld is in the audience as well.
Oh, great.
So
Thanks, Don, for putting up the show.
Yeah, I got it.
So, Mr. Gottesfeld, thanks for joining us. The protocol this evening is I'm gonna do a quick presentation. There'll be some discussion amongst council members, and then we'll reach out to you if there are any questions. So this is a proposed minor boundary line adjustment between two existing developed properties. The shift in boundary line is intended to resolve an encroachment for driveway and telephone utility and other structural encroachments. We've been asked by this referral to provide comments by the 20th of February. Clearly, this is not going to happen, but we'll talk about protocol for our reviews a little bit later in the evening. But staff has asked me to get comments from GMAC back to them as quickly as possible. This is a pretty straightforward exercise. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Couple properties under 10 acres. These are legally non-conforming with residentially designated land use and zoning. Again, both properties are developed with existing residential units. This is off of Roseman Creek Road on a private access right of way. It's up toward the top of the ridge, but again, well away from the ocean, totally outside of scenic corridor, and essentially not visible from any public right of way. The properties are both have a variety of topography, from fairly level from where the existing development is to fairly steep where those properties drop off toward drainages on north and south areas. The habitat there is pretty typical of the ridge. It's been logged at least once, and subsequent development has further modified, again, the upland forest habitat, but it's in fairly good shape. It looks, at least with respect to aerial photography. So there are some habitat value, but we're not talking about pristine habitat. Again, two developed properties. The boundary line adjustment will occur in the developed areas of properties. Next slide, please. Excuse me. You can see here a snip from the proposal mapping. The two properties are adjacent, kind of up and down on the image. The red lines show the equal exchange of just under a half acre of land, again intended to resolve some encroachments. Features that serve the Gottesfeld property, land exchange with the Gottesfeld neighbor to the north. There will be no subsequent development that's inherent to this boundary line adjustment. Again, this is intended to resolve it. If there's any subsequent development, that would have a totally separate development proposal. Next slide, please. I had contact with county staff, again, part of their request for us to expedite comment to them so that they can proceed with a timely consideration of this boundary line adjustment proposal. Both property owners, the owners of both properties have been actively involved and support the proposal in front of us tonight. The adjustment of the boundary lines won't affect the potential for subsequent development or continuing use of the development of both properties. So this is kind of a no harm, no foul from overarching land use regulation standpoint. Next slide. So as always, my recommendation is that we defer to staff in the county for technical matters related to county ordinance. In this case, in particular, boundary line determinations, subdivision map in county code. Recommend that we support approval of this boundary line adjustment. Timely resolution.
So, the applicant, Mr. Gottesfeld, would you like to offer any comments or further input on before the council brings it back and deliberates on your item?
Certainly, I just wanted to first of all thank the council for all its hard work, particularly in recent years in light of having solidified the downtown plan with CalTrans. I know that was a major effort. In terms of the boundary line adjustment, some of the encroachment dates back to the 1970s, and this would correct misdeeds that go way back. I purchased the place 25 years ago and didn't recognize any of the borders until most recently, about 3 years ago. And that's what was the beginning of the discussion with the neighbors about correcting the situation with a boundary line adjustment. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I bring it back to the, any public comments on this? None? Okay, bring it back to the council for a discussion or action. Dan?
Well, it appears there's no downside to this, no one seems to be arguing against it. My observation.
Move that we recommend to approve the TDP as written in the reservation.
Okay, we have a motion by Henry, second by Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Congratulations, Mr. Gottesfeld. Excellent report, Mr. Spock, and thank you. Item 7.2, Coastal Development Permit 2024-0043 from CalTrans District 1.
Can I have some comments just to try to expedite this one too?
Sure.
Okay, I've talked with the staff planner, who's also asking for responses by the due date, which is 14, well before the usual process we render comment. So to try to help things along, I've asked Don to put up the CDP, and let me just summarize this for us. Again, my intent is not to try to squelch discussion amongst GMAC, but in some cases like this, and the previous one, these are pretty cut and dried, and in some ways we serve best by getting. So this is a case where CalTrans is going to be wants to replace the culvert that carries Fish Rock Gulch under Highway 1 at the bottom of Sunset to and through the Anchor Bay campground. That culvert is blocking fish passage, so CalTrans is under direction to, throughout their District 1 boundaries, they have funding and direction from the state to look at cases where existing highway infrastructure are obstructing normal ecological processes, fish passage. So, reason for this proposal is again to resolve a fish passage issue without getting into a debate about whether that the merits of fish passage. I'm going to trip over that. Simply on the face of it, it's a worthy goal to do the best we can with our environmental resources. In order to implement that shift, which would be to remove the culvert and replace it with a clear span bridge, be a small structure. CalTrans has to conduct geotechnical investigations to determine the competence of geology for those bridge buttons. This particular proposal would have 3 geotechnical bores in the paved highway lane, northbound lane, and at the bottom of Sunset. So again, bores 4 to 6 inches in diameter in the existing pavement, with all the work contained within either paved or otherwise right of way. So no staging in the creek, no impacts in the creek, no discharge in the creek. The drilling would occur at night, so no major impact on transport. Yes, people at night would be inconvenienced, but there would be traffic managed to be essentially one lane pass around. The period for the investigations would be limited by nesting seasons, likely late summer through the end of the calendar year. Exactly when you're going to implement, but that's a constraint. Best management practices would be required by CalTrans waste discharge permitting. So they're going to have to contain any drill liquids, any other fuel hazards. All the construction staging would be monitored and managed under the conditions of those regulatory procedures. No vegetation removal, again, totally on inside of right of way. No harm, no foul type of approach. This is not the actual CDP for the bridge replacement. If you want to roll through this a little bit, I can show you more specifically about the locations. You have to scroll a little while. You will get to a map that shows.
Yeah, microphone, or you want to hold it?
Thank you for the reminder. Go ahead and keep moving. These are sample plot plans. Okay, here we go. So here's Anchor Bay campground, Sunset coming down the hill. This is the approximate footprint of the project. Go ahead and keep scrolling. There should be some more specific imagery.
Can you scroll?
Keep scrolling just a little bit more. We're going to go through the usual mapping. This is the work area up in Fort Bragg. So that's a LiDAR image. It not really helpful, but we'll get something in a second. Keep going.
That's it. That's the end.
That's the end?
Yep.
Wow. Okay, go ahead and go up to that LiDAR image. That's the best we can, I guess, hear. Surprised it cut off. Next one. There we go. So here you've got is essentially a LiDAR topographic map. It's a little fuzzy, but I think everyone's familiar with the geography here. So a couple shots in the northbound lane of the highway, and then a third one at the bottom of Sunset in that intersection. So again, the notion here is to try to characterize the geotechnical conditions that would affect design of two bridge abutments. That's the project. So pitch to the group, if I can make that, if it's okay, is let's go ahead and have a discussion. I'm happy to write comments back to CalTrans, back to planning and building services if that's acceptable to the group. Or we can go ahead and sign it to somebody to review and bring it back to us. Bring it back to the group at our regular meeting. My recommendation is that we have our discussion and you tell me what you want to comment. I know it's a little bit off protocol, but I don't think that we would necessarily serve the taxpayer well by flowing this from here.
Any questions for Dave before I open it up to the council or to the public comments? None? Any public comments? John?
Watched that for quite a few years. There actually was a time when it flooded over the top of the highway and went down to the.
Oh, excuse me.
Robert, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, we need this.
Anyway, 2 or 3 things going on there. The south part of this bank in here has been eroding and a few trees have come down in the past. And you guys you haven't been here for long enough to see how many have come down. But if you happen to drive a piece of equipment like I have to go through there once in a while with, it's a low bed and it's got an 11-foot wide tractor on it. I cannot go down that one lane and stay in it. This demands a pilot car, demands some other issues. I can't make a good turn into Enchanted Meadows without going clear over into the other road lane because it's not really set up. It's super this way. And if you want to go up there, you're almost going to drag the bottom of a low bed across that east side or north side. If this could be taken care of, slightly widening, maybe bringing some of this back up here and try to cut this out. I have to go in this whole lane over here, almost halfway up before I can make sure my trailer doesn't hit the guardrail. That's a severe issue for those of us that have to drive bigger vehicles down the highway. And it's also a dangerous issue with potential bicyclists. And there is no trail for people out there. They cannot walk down through there safely. So there are 3 or 4 things that CalTrans should be examining when they try to put this together. I understand that the campground had to put, I want to call products called gabions, which are wired square or whatever containers of large rock to keep the campground from being washed out. So that's probably narrowed a little bit down there. And there may be some additional issues downstream if that thing does pick up and flow more. If they increase the ability of that water to flow through there, then that could happen to the campground. You know, there's a couple roadways through the campground that probably will facilitate some of that water to run off out toward the ocean. But it's kind of, you know, there's a lot of things to think about here. One is if you start to take some of these trees off the bank, they're just going to keep cascading down because the bank is fairly steep. Trees, if you go by there now and take a look, there's 3 or 4 of them that you see all the dirt around the roots and no more vegetation. It's been moving around to get it ready to fall down. If I go down that side, like I said, if I go down this side going north, I can't stay over far enough to stay out of the other lane. I'm in the other lane no matter what. Of course, you start to turn up here, that's where you first find yourself in the other lane. And, oh my God, if you're coming down this way and you happen to look across and see a car over there with a low bed, just stop. Let them get by. So there are 3 or 4 safety items here, and I think you could improve a walkability, and maybe this could be part of the coastal trail. I don't know. But in this issue, there's a lot more to take on that maybe can't be fixed too easily, like a little bridge. So that's what I see.
Thank you. Any other comments, Corinne?
Yeah.
No. Dan, we'll bring it back to us. So,
Huh?
Dan, yeah, we'll bring it back to the council now.
Oh, okay. There's a couple of issues going on there, especially in relation to what Mr. Bauer mentioned. That creek has a steelhead run, the CDFW is going to be interested in maintaining that for water quality and sedimentation and all that. That's going to be an issue. Also, the campground has, I think the term is riprap, the creek sides, and then wired parts of that in order to try and keep their trailers from falling into the creek. And they have been, CalTrans has been up there working for a while now, and maybe they've got survey crews that were there today in the campground, a couple of CalTrans vehicles in there. And they've also been underneath the highway there. They've had guys crawling underneath there. So, you know, I know they're doing their due diligence on getting ready to put this into some kind of operation, but they have to gather all the information. I'd like to know exactly what kind of a transit underneath there. You were talking about board, and I don't understand what you meant by that.
Clear span,
Huh?
clear span bridge.
Yeah, okay.
That's
So replacing the culvert that exists there with a bridge.
so just to make everyone understand very, very clearly, this proposal is not the bridge.
It's
This
not a bridge.
No, this proposal is just to gather geotechnical data.
Oh, okay.
There's no bridge here, there's no design here, there's no solution here.
Yeah.
This is a data acquisition step.
Oh, yeah.
Essential. They can't do anything else until they get this data, just like they can't do anything unless they get out there and survey. So because this is a surface disturbing activity, it is subject to coastal development permit approval. That's different than walking a transit out and citing survey lines. That is the sole nature of this proposal.
Gotcha.
So commentary notwithstanding, it's all really important, but that's not in front of us.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Then my comment, and I guess I'm echoing what David said, that this is not the project, this is just so they can move forward with and get all the information to go back and get permission to move forward with this project. My feeling is we don't have to assign it to, I don't believe we need to assign it to a GMAC member. I think it's pretty straightforward, and with the council's pleasure, we could probably act on it this evening. Agreed. So I will throw it out to the council. What is your pleasure? Would you like to move on this and approve it, or?
Yeah, would love to hear a motion from Dave if he's got one ready. I think.
Okay. I haven't heard any comments from us or from the public that have direct bearing on why we should not support this proposal moving forward. And I think that's correct. So my motion is simple. I'm happy to prepare the one-page comment saying that we recommend that the county approve this proposal, and just keep it as simple as that. If you wish, I can add a note saying that we do request, however, to be involved in consideration of the ultimate development project when that is available.
Wouldn't that be standard that it would
I think it's
probably
standard,
go
but
through
I think
another development permit?
they'll have to get another, definitely.
Right, so it would have, so in theory, it wouldn't be coming back to us.
It's gonna come back, I believe it would come back to us for one way or the other, but
Right.
if the council members felt more comfortable with us being very explicit in making that statement of interest, I can do that, or not even bother. But I'll leave it to you to direct.
So what's your motion?
Okay. You gotta say something.
No, it wouldn't hurt to reiterate that. Okay.
Might also mean they get it to us a little earlier than sometimes they do. Might not.
Okay, so would you like to state your
Okay,
motion?
I recommend that GMAC recommend that the county approve the proposed CDP and request that the county involve the GMAC at the earliest possible opportunity in the ultimate development project.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by
That's right.
Dave, we have a second by Henry. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Dave, and thank you for getting that off our plate.
Kevin,
John?
just a quick comment, and that is, sometimes when these things are, these projects are somewhat complicated, they can deal a lot with the public transportation needs. How can it come down and have public meetings? So I needed those comments to try to necessitate that inclusion, where it works for everyone.
I think that's a great point, and what we can do is, when it, comes on our plate and it's on our agenda, we can definitely post it and maybe even put a notice in the paper for public participation. Okay, moving on, item 8.2, Bar Park Rehabilitation Project. I would like to just say a big thank you and shout out to Henry for putting together the questionnaire and getting it out. Henry was kind enough to include Dan and I in the conversation and review of it, but I think he put together a pretty concise questionnaire to provide appropriate comments back to the county of Mendocino in the rehabilitation of Bower Park. So with that, Henry, I bounce past it to you.
Sure, yeah. So we met with the county and with Integra, the consultant, and have been in sort of ongoing conversation with them about the renovation project. They have a really, I think we think really solid plan for the core features of the project. There are also sort of additional alternatives to the extent that there is budget remaining. Obviously, they don't design the core features with the idea that they'll use up all, they don't assume that everything is going to come in at their estimates. So there are add alternatives that would be incorporated in the bidding process. And then as the project proceeds, they'll know if they can bring some of those in. So we're certainly not going to get all of those, and they are interested in community feedback on how the community would prioritize those alternatives if any of them can get into the project, which we won't know until much later in the process. So I put together a questionnaire to ask for priorities, just real simple. Here are the things that are in their proposed potential alternatives, 1 through 5. How important do you think this thing is? So we've collected some responses on that already. They are going to the county this week with their sort of 90% complete drawings and estimates and such. And then there's going to be a few week process. Right? The county's going to have that for a little while and then go back to them, and then there will be another iteration. So at first, I had thought it was, let's get as much as we can, even though the timeline is short, for this week. Having had subsequent conversations with Mike from Integra, their feeling is, again, these decisions are not going to be finalized until much later in the process. They do want that input for the next iteration, but they'd rather have a more, they'd rather have more responses, in 2 weeks than they would have limited responses this week. That's more useful to them. So we have a little bit more time than I figured we had. So I don't know if, I'll be interested in input from the council as to how we want to handle that. We do want to get them that information before we're going to have another regularly scheduled meeting. So I don't know whether we want to sort of, one way we could go about it, we could say, here's the feeling of the council, and then also here are the responses we've collected from the community. We could really just send along responses from the community. We could try to marry those two in some other way. There's the questionnaire that has already collected 15 responses, which is about the ad alternatives. There's going to be another one that I'll be sending out probably tonight that is very focused on the playground equipment, where I combed through 700 some odd different pieces of playground equipment that are manufactured by the manufacturer they're working with, to try to collect the ones that seem most promising in terms of their usefulness at limited budget. So I'm going to send out another questionnaire that presumably parents will be more interested in than non-parents about specific items, because they know they're going to bring in some additional equipment, but what specifically they bring in, they're interested in community input. So that's a second survey that has not yet gone out, which once I have that ready, which again should be tonight, I'll distribute to the council and ask the council to distribute to any interested parties, which we should also do with the ad alternative.
Okay.
That rambling summary is there.
I haven't seen this.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We discussed it at the end of last week, and then kind of divvied up a few different distribution channels, and somehow neglected to have any of us distribute it to the rest of GMAC, which is an oversight for which I will take responsibility. Sorry about that. I will send that out tonight as well, asking both for your input and for you to distribute. Again, we have a little bit more time, fortunately, than I feared. So, if the sooner we can get things, the better. But if it's, end of next week, I think we're in good shape on sending things back their way. But again, my apologies that I did not assign or take myself distributing it to the council.
Any questions for Henry, Dan, or me?
So your self-imposed deadline for wrapping this all up is?
It's vague. They did not give a deadline from Integra. Let me double check exactly what he said. Sorry, one moment. So I don't misspeak the he said, I hope we can get some survey responses in the next 2 weeks. This was yesterday. So I think we should strongly encourage people to respond by the end of next week. And if some people lag a little bit, maybe we can get those in. Maybe I'll target like the following Monday after the weekend, but maybe we can communicate to people that they should do it by Friday next week. And I'll add that to the description in the form.
So how much would it push back the project? Yeah, because we're only talking about 3 weeks away, 4 weeks, three some odd weeks away before our next meeting. Would that really put them off schedule if we kept the response time open till our next meeting, and then the council can review the comments and then be able to make a pretty educated response based on public input on what the community feels like they would like to see in Bower Park? Because right now I don't feel that we have enough information to either support or deny different aspects of that. And I would definitely like to hear from the public. That's my opinion, would be to delay it until the April 3rd meeting or whatever. April 2nd meeting.
You want a deadline to give yourself some time to compile.
I would be reluctant to hold back all of the information until then. I think they will use it. I think they are, like, their timeline with the county is not our meeting timeline. And I'm not sure how much gloss, honestly, GMAC needs to be adding to this. I think sending them sort of more like, obviously we want to condense the community feedback into usable form, but for me, I think we want them to hear more or less directly from the community. I think my inclination is to say, we don't really need to discuss it again. We're trying to collect the information and then we send it in as raw form, it'll be tabulated, but beyond that, that's my feeling, is that that's useful to them. And then that doesn't mean we can't have subsequent discussion in April and send them further thoughts from the council. Again, these things are not going to be final, really until the project, well after the project is broken ground, like the different ad alternatives have different costs, and at some point there's going to be a weighing of, well, we like these things, but maybe they don't fit in the budget. Maybe we can get two of these other things that we like for the, that's something we can have subsequent involvement in, I would hope. But collecting further information down the road, I think, is still of value. But I would want to get them what we can when we can.
I think, go ahead and then.
I just want to clarify something, that the input you want from us, since you're finally going to send us.
Yeah, sorry
a
about that.
survey, is just as members of the community.
Well, I would ask,
Of which we are.
yeah, I would ask both your input as members of the community and for you to distribute this within your own networks.
Okay.
And then, well, I have one other thought on distribution that I can get to.
Can I ask
After
a
this.
quick question? No, I really appreciate you feeling the urgency at the moment, because we can't slow the county down. We do so at our peril.
Yeah.
Because that money's at risk. And this project has to go, and they still need to get through bidding and contracting, all that other stuff. So is it your sense, Henry, that the input that is being gathered now, does it affect the actual solicitation, or is it a part of the county's evaluation of things that come in and final decision making with respect to construction scope?
I guess I can't be sure. I think that I think all the ad alternatives are going to go into the bid packet.
Right, so you really, the focus of these questions is priority setting, less about the adults, and it is about really finally dialing in the core project to make sure that at the very least, assuming that the economics cooperate with us, that the core project meets priorities set by the community. Is that a correct characterization?
No.
Can I jump in on
Yeah,
that?
please.
Quick? No, I think the core project is pretty sound. It's not being changed. What the questionnaire that Henry put together is really more about the add-ons and the playground.
Well,
But the core layout and the whole parkland that they developed is pretty much set. That's what they're moving forward on. The only really two sticking points right now that they're looking for public input. One is the playground,
which is part of the core project.
and that is more of, do they want a whole new structure, or do they want the piecemeal? But everything else, from the dog park and the benches around the pond area and all that, those are all add-ons, and I don't think they need that now. So I think the only critical component, Henry, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the current plan that they need to have input on whether they move forward as designed or not, is the playground area. Everything else is pretty much accepted.
Yeah, I mean, I think they want the prioritizations on the ad alternative.
Right, but what I mean is, but as far as them to move forward, they don't need the add-on, the alternatives right now. What they need is for us as GMAC and the community to say, we like your plan. We would like you to amend or modify the playground structure based on public input. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the feeling that, and I got the feeling from the council tonight, we're pretty happy with the design that was submitted to us by staff and
Yeah.
consultant.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're just giving the public an opportunity to weigh in. And based on the questionnaire that you put together, and I know Dan and I have had the benefit of seeing it, it's more about the alternatives with the dog park and everything else. And it's not about the core specifics of the park except the playground.
Yeah, and so maybe I can just, so for context, so the ad alternatives as listed, there's group picnic improvements, walking path expansion, so extending the walking path to the pond and to the play area, walking path amenities, so adding tables and benches along the path, outdoor fitness equipment, dog park, lighting for security, and additional play equipment. And sorry, these last two are ones that were not in the initial ad alternatives. These are ones that were that we as the committee wanted to also solicit responses on. That's additional play equipment and amphitheater repairs or improvements. So additional play equipment is sort of, there's going to be a core part of that, which is gonna, they're gonna build a whole new 2 to 5 playground, that's core. And then the current core plan, which I was not on board with at first and have come around on, is repairing the 5 to 12 playground, with those repairs being pretty detailed. And so I went out and took a bunch of pictures of various things and sent them along to Integra, and actually just got an email today from Ross Recreation, the company that makes this stuff, asking for a little bit more detail. So I'm gonna go take some more pictures tomorrow. As part of that, they're gonna expand the footprint of that 5 to 12 playground. And so there's probably gonna be some wiggle room about how much stuff goes into that expanded footprint. I've also recommended that they maintain that expansion even if they can't fill it up with stuff, to have room for subsequent, community funded or subsequent grants or whatever, so we can bring in more equipment without having to fundamentally change the layout of anything, and just have areas, if we can't get it now, where we could drop stuff in. But that also sounds to me like an ad alternative. So that's why we requested that go in. And then the amphitheater is another one where that space is not necessarily going to get used for anything, depending on what happens with the dog park, and where the contours of that come in. Those could conflict a little bit if they're going to do it. We're not sure if they're going to do it. So that feels like another ad alternative where it could happen, it could not, it doesn't change the core of the project. So the playground equipment, is it some part of that is core and some part of that may be ad alternative? It's just hard to answer which one it is. It's kind of both.
So the Friends of the Bauer Park, they're gonna weigh in on all
Big
this
Bauer
too.
Park?
That's part of the survey program too, right? That's not just us, okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think we want as much feedback from as many places as we can, which we had not thought about trying to get it. We didn't think there was time for broader distribution channels, but now perhaps there is. So I don't know what the feeling of the council is for, I'm sure we are beyond the deadline for obviously the ICO tomorrow, but we could get something into the ICO for the following week if we wanted to. to send people to the survey and say, hey, you know, you've got a few days to do this.
Okay.
And then obviously we should put it, or my feeling would be we should put it on the website as well. A link to it.
Yeah, just a quick question on that. What's the submission procedure for this?
It's just a
survey?
Google form.
Okay, so we can send, if I have neighbors that I know that might want to participate in the survey,
That's what I
send
said.
them a link to it. or-
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So bring it back to the original discussion of this. This is something that we as a council can say that we can respond to county staff, say the full park element we're comfortable with the exception of the playground that we're looking and gathering more comments from the community, but as far as the rest of the park element, we're comfortable with that. That way, they're not thinking, oh, they could change the basketball court, they could change, you know, all that. Is that a message that we could send to them now, saying we're comfortable with the park element as presented with the exception of the playground, and that we will provide further information to them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really think they're waiting to hear from us on that.
Probably not.
But there's no harm in doing it.
Okay.
I mean, I do, yeah. Think, you know, from our committee discussions, I think we all felt it was a solid plan.
Then do we have a motion from the council to send a response to the county indicating that we're comfortable with the park element as presented, and that with the exception of the playground area, and that we will provide further comments based on our public survey at a later time?
Yeah, I don't know if people want me to run through kind of the list of what's in that budget document, sort of at a high level. I don't know, the budget document's not not really the best way to go through it. But I could try to summarize the project if people feel like they're still in the dark on some of it.
If you're able to disclose, you know, the hard costs that they have so far with their estimates, you know, if that doesn't take up too much of the time, because I think that the public is, based on what I know, the public is concerned about being shortchanged with vague, you know, soft costs and, you know, county management costs, especially the parents that are concerned about getting shortchanged on the play equipment. And I agree very realistically that if we can get the best, you know, the best core use out of the grant to get a new, as much of a new playground as we can get, so that there's also room for, as you put, future, you know, county funded additions to the playground. I think that the survey with more input should be helpful to discern what the public feels like those core things should be, whether it's like more than just 2 swings, you know, like 4 or 6 swings, if that's something that can be part of the core, you know, and then there's more things you can add on later. I also think that if I can just comment, I think that the public broadly, as far as the add-ons, the number one thing that sticks out is the dog park. I think that the community, you know, really wants a new playground, in addition to everything that's proposed in the, you know, the core project. And that something like a dog park, if that's left open to be funded by the county at a later time, if that ends up not being fundable with this project, that would be the number one thing beyond any additional benches and, you know, shrubbery and all that kind of stuff that just quickly eats up costs. I think that you know, to summarize, that would be the core focus of the add-ons, but, yeah, I don't know if you're able to, you know, disclose what the cost estimates they have, that might be, you know, sound obscure, such as soft costs and administrative costs.
You want like a top line for the core?
Sure, yeah, I don't want to take much anything that jumps out to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like they were comfortable.
Oh,
Trying to remember what they were comfortable with us sharing.
yeah,
publicly on
let
budget.
me,
Yeah, I don't want us to
yeah, let
disclose
me
anything.
kind of draw a quick summary on this. The numbers that they have prepared right now are kind of a standard for the, or for building a playground area, for building a tennis court, so they're not specific numbers where they've gone to a contractor
Yeah.
and said, we want to put in a 2 to 5 year old playground plus material, plus siding and all of that, plus permitting. So they don't have the hard cost yet. Everything is kind of a boilerplate cost. If you're putting it in a playground, this is what it's going to cost. If you're putting in a basketball court, this is what it's cost. And that's what they said to us, is that they didn't feel comfortable putting out those numbers because they're not the accurate numbers. They have not gone out to a contractor to say, what will it cost to build a basketball court or whatever. That's why they really caution three of us to say, yes, we've got this amount of money, and this is what we project the cost of the project's going to be. But once they bid it out for actual construction, a lot of that money will be caught up in the primary construction costs, and there may not be any money for alternatives, and they may even have to downsize the original project.
Right.
So they
But we
don't
don't know until that.
Yeah, so they don't want to go out and say, we get all these things for $2 million, and then put it out to bid, and they come back and say it's 2.5, because the county was very specific, if I'm not mistaken. We can't spend any more money than that $2.2 million. They said there's no county money at all allocated for the project. That's not to say the Board of Supervisors can't allocate county funds for that.
Right.
But right now, they have their marching orders, and they can only spend what's in the state grant.
That makes sense.
Is that correct, Dan?
That's how I understand it, and as we all know, the cost of materials right now is going up by the minute.
Yeah. What's today's point is why it's important that this project moves along.
That's why, yeah, that's why we've got to send a clear message to the county, but I think everybody knows that the county has put together their plans, and staff is driven by the county budget and the county CEO and the Board of Supervisors, and our comments are great, and we're the front line to the public, but we can't spend any more money than they have, and every time we delay, that could cost us a swing, that could cost us a bench. Yeah, so my personal feeling is I think we really need to send a clear message to the county that we support this project, and we don't want to lose time on it and lose our window of opportunity and have it cost more.
That's okay. We really support this project. We wish for this project to proceed as expeditiously as possible without any further delay. GMAC supports the project as currently planned, as defined in the most recent documents that describe the base project and the list of bad alternates. We understand that the county is soliciting input for the specifics for playground solicitation and priority for add-ons. And we will be sharing that information with the county within the next 2 or 3 weeks, as we are able to complete that work. That's my motion.
I'm waiting to see you have all that written down.
I'm gonna use the recording. And if you want a shorter version, just say, I'll just say it. GMAC supports the project.
I
Want the
second,
project to proceed as rapidly as it can because costs are going up.
I'll second that motion.
We got a motion and a second, on the shortened version.
All right.
I would have said.
Yeah, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Chair,
Yeah.
do we want to have any public comment?
John, would you like to comment, or Corinne? Sorry.
I was just curious about how the survey is distributed to the public. I heard you talking about posting it on the GMAC website, and I went and looked, and I didn't see anything there. I'm not sure. It's not up yet.
Yeah, no, that hasn't happened yet. That
Okay.
was waiting for this council discussion. I think maybe we can move on this motion, and then I'd like to have a subsequent discussion about distribution, if that's okay with everybody.
That's fine. Are you comfortable with that? Okay. We have a motion second, and Corinne, we will come back to your comment on the council support for the project. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll go. Corinne, hang on. We'll go to John, and then we'll go back to Corinne.
I don't have.
Okay.
I'm in favor of moving forward and getting the survey information done and forwarded to the county
Okay,
as quickly as possible.
Corinne, you want to wait to hear Councilmember Mayor's motion or suggestion? All right, I got a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, Henry, what's your second action item?
So I don't know that I don't think this needs formal action, but well, actually, except probably, yeah, so well, some distribution channels that I think definitely make sense would be the council distributing it as widely as they can. Fixed Power Park is also a useful distribution channel for us in this. I would like to print out a flyer with link to the survey and post it in a few places in Bower Park, since the people who use it will be interested. And then I don't know if this is the kind of thing that we would need to pay the ICO to put out, or if they would do this as part of their general, news gathering and public facing role. I don't know if we can get the ICO to put this in somewhere without that incurring a cost.
Yeah, let me go ahead and weigh in that real quick. Because this is a county project, I think, and they're looking for public input. I think, because we also did that with the notice when we canceled the January meeting, we took an ad out in the ICO and we submitted the bill to the county. I think it would also be appropriate to do that, take an ad out regarding this, regarding public input from the public regarding park improvements. And you can find a survey at whatever site. And I think that would be a well-deserved use of the county and the public's money to notify the public on what's going on and getting their input. So I would say, yeah, if you could prepare an ad for the ICO, contact them. I think the ad, if I'm not mistaken, for the meeting cancellation was like $46 or something like that. It's not going to break the bank, but I think it's well worth getting the notice out to the public. So you're right. I don't think we need a formal action. I think a consensus of that we want to communicate with the public on the survey is probably appropriate.
Yeah, there's certainly money left in our $5,000 budget.
I think we should do a formal motion, and I'll do that.
Okay.
Move that we request that Henry and the committee prepare judgment for the ICO that answers the surveys. But gets that into the ICO on its next issue.
I'll second.
Get a motion second. Take it back to the public. Corinne, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about distribution and how it can get to more people. And I'm curious if GMAC has, as outdated as it is, seems to be pretty relevant in the coast community here of the Facebook groups. Um, or does the GMAC ever use like mailing address distributions like the library does or the Point Arena um, theater? And does GMAC have a like an email list where the public can be on that list and then get like newsletters from GMAC? It seems like the ICO um, is maybe not the most effective way of getting participation, especially for a digital survey.
It'd be more effective than our website, for all I know.
I think
I-
that is the most effective, to Henry's point, is distribution from the stakeholder groups like Fixed Bar Park and I believe Coast Little League is involved. You know, there's it takes some, you know, some community grassroots style, you know, sharing the survey. You know, I think Facebook is also very valuable in this community. We kind of have to do all modalities that we can because we don't have, GMAC doesn't have an official apparatus like that, like an email list, you know, which is a great idea. But by itself doesn't have that kind of capability.
Posting in the park, like you guys were talking about.
Yeah, I really like Henry's
Posting it
idea.
at the post
Posting at the
office.
park is
Yeah,
really good idea. Kind of have to do everything.
Once you have the ad constructed, you can do anything you want with it.
Yeah.
Well-
when is opening day for Coastal Little League?
April, I think.
Oh.
No, this has to go.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking if it was in March, we could
But,
have them hand out notices to all the families that are in attendance at opening day.
Yeah, I mean, I bet there's a lot of email contact information. I could try to send it to Jamie at Coast Little League and ask her if she could distribute that to families.
And use the mailing list from RCRC.
Yeah, wasn't, yeah.
Oh, it's done?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't go.
yeah, you asked me to do that, so I sent it to Derek and what's her name, Donna.
Yeah, Donna, thank you.
It's probably gone out to their
Okay.
mailing list.
So Corinne,
Hasn't.
her hand's up again. Go ahead.
I was just curious about representation at pay and take. I know a lot of the community shows up there.
Yeah,
You
you
can
wanna,
set up a table at Pay and Take.
That's a good idea.
yeah.
Yeah, because other groups, Action Network is set up there and other groups have set up and handed out information there. You could do that as well.
That would count as sort of the 11th hour, right? Because the next pay and take is 2 weeks from now, and
Yeah.
so it's like right down to the wire. I mean, it's every little bit helps.
Yeah.
I think that the email lists of the, you know, groups, you know, vested groups in the community, Fixed Bar Park, Little League, you know, any other that I can't, but those are going to be large chunks of, you know, working families and larger numbers in the community that we need to have weigh in addition to Facebook and on the website and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm like super down for, you know, a table at pay and take, but you know, that specifically is sort of the 11th hour as far as the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, the surveys themselves, you know, they take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, to be honest, I'm not sure how much it degrades participation if it's like, you got to do this tomorrow.
Right.
Versus you have, you know, you might even get a higher hit rate. It's like, you got to do this tomorrow, then like, oh, you've got 2 weeks to do it. People say, oh, I'll do it later and then forget about it. So,
Shall we vote on the motion?
Yeah.
well, I'll just say on the table idea, I know I'm not gonna be able to do that. I am. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to do that, but I don't know, if somebody else can, I would certainly
Sure.
support it, but.
Okay, Corinne, thank you for your comment on that. Do you have anything else to share?
Is the public allowed to volunteer to participate in that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Cool. I'm on the email list,
Oh.
so we can coordinate.
All
I'd
right.
be happy to participate.
Well, we appreciate that. We have a motion on the table. We have a second, right?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Do we have a second on the motion?
Well, I
Robert,
thought we did, but I'll let you second it.
okay, second by Robert. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor,
Well, sorry.
signify by saying
Excuse
aye.
me, could somebody repeat the motion, please?
That we approve the Bower Park,
Simpler motion, wasn't it?
I think we,
The
we
motion was-
simplified it. Not the law.
We voted on it.
No, not the law.
Let me repeat the motion I made.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. It's
So the
Henry.
motion is to direct the Bower Park Committee
Right.
to
That's
prepare an advertisement for publishing in the ICO that will provide notice of the surveys with links and to have that submitted to ICO to publish in the next issue. That's the motion. Robert,
Mhm.
thank you for seconding. You know, mechanically, once you've got the object in your hand, you can do whatever you want.
yeah, great.
Okay, we have a motion to put an ad in the ICO. That simplifies.
The
it, right?
reason I
Yeah,
want to do that is because we are. gonna
Thank
spend
you.
money.
Yeah.
okay. Any other comments? Hearing none? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Henry, also you have the option as a resident to put a letter to the editor. And
Yeah.
it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah,
And just say, hey, this is what, Bower Park, coming up with Bower Park, and we want your input.
Time is of the essence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I do know that we do get comments from people that read letters, the editors, so.
Sometimes a different audience, frankly, than the notices. People really dig the letters.
Yeah. So. do that.
yeah, and, the sooner we get them, the more useful, but that's not to say that getting input later in the process is useless.
Right. And as soon as you finalize that, go and get it to Don and we can put it on the GMAC website as well.
Great. I should be able to get that together, if not tomorrow, then by Friday.
Okay. Item number 9, new business, 9.1, Mendocino County Planning and Building Services, Public Agency Referrals. To discuss the typical GMAC procedure and ways to improve compliance with common due dates. And that item was submitted by Councilmember Spock, so.
Okay, we know we have a time offset problem in trying to work PBS requests. Typically, when there is a referral made, the turnaround time is 2, maybe 3 weeks. And depending upon when those referrals are published, they either hit our schedule, our monthly schedule, and most often they do not. And what that does is, unfortunately, place GMAC on the critical path, and we're oftentimes holding up planning and building service staff reports, or planning and building services staff have to process a staff report, and they're trying to kind of fit it into the breach, which I don't think any of us wants that to be our role. There was a recent case where the staff report went to the commission, and as it was drafted, it indicated that there was no input from GMAC, when in fact, GMAC had attempted to provide input, but for whatever reason, likely due to time shift, didn't get to the staff planner in time to acknowledge that input in the staff report to the planning commission. Again, that's not what we're spending our volunteer time for at all, and sharing our perspective. So I've tried to, implement a couple expedited tactics and trickery, and you've seen what that's like today. Fortunately, these are 2 latest expedited efforts on projects that are fairly straightforward. No harm, no foulers. But oftentimes what we're dealing with is stuff that we really need to weigh in on, that they're more complex. That's the vast majority of the work that comes to us. I've corresponded with Mark Kleiser, who's one of the senior planners, and this is what he would like us to consider doing. One, they're gonna be telling me, I'm gonna get a notice as soon as this referral's up, rather than waiting for one of us to discover a referral randomly because we happen to go to the county website. They're gonna tell us, they're gonna tell us when a referral's made, so we'll know that in time. Depending upon the timing of that announcement, I can respond in real time and tell the planner, look, you're off time. We're not gonna have a regular meeting in time for your deadline. Or not. And essentially what Kaiser came back with is that he gets it, they're reviewing it. However, they're under increasing pressure to push. Nobody likes to wait. Applicants have put money down. The board of supervisors is under increasing pressure to, again, move things through the program. The longer things are around, the more money it costs the county. And the more money it costs applicants and everybody. So what Kaiser has asked that within the deadline of a referral, that I tell the county whether we can turn a comment around within that deadline. So that's within a few hours or days. Within their deadline period, I give them constructive notice saying we can or cannot, which is, I've already been doing that. So they know if there's going to be a delay. They're also asking if there's any informal comments that we can render. So for example, in this case of the CalTrans, we were able to do that formally because it's valid. What if a referral comes to us a day or 2 or 10 before our meeting, if we can at least get a kind of a test of the inclination of the committee before a formal analysis and recommendations met, then I can return that informal inclination of the council to the planning staff, again, on their timeline. They'll know generally where we're headed, but they can wait for us to render a more formal evaluation and formal recommendation. Yeah. Not exactly how our bylaws are written, it's not how we've been taking on our protocol, but it's a request from county staff that I think has merit. You can let them know what to expect, that there is going to be a time problem, that there is an initial reaction. We can share that with them. I can do that. I can support that effort. Essentially buy us time on our normal turnaround period for volunteers to take a look at a project, do the site review, interact with the applicant, all the usual things that we do, and then have a more complete conversation amongst ourselves at a regular meeting. So if that general approach to things makes sense to everybody, that's again, that's my desire having this item on the agenda.
Let's go around because I've got some thoughts too. So Henry.
So to me, somewhat alongside that, I do feel like we can chop a month off of this relatively easily. Like often we do not need a meeting to assign it to somebody and then another meeting to discuss it. So I would love to see something more like we just have a, rolling roster of, okay, it's this person's turn to take the next one. You get it. You just send it right on to that person. Say, hey, you're up. If you can't do it by the meeting, let me know, and then it goes to the next person, whatever. So that we don't waste the month of saying, okay, well, we need one meeting to assign and one meeting to act. It'd just be way better if we could just have these popping up on the agenda for action as opposed to for assignment. I feel like that would solve a big chunk of the problem. On the specific sort of informal comment that you were just discussing, I'm very sympathetic to that, but I'm wary because we are an advisory body. There's just not that much daylight between here's our informal read of it and here's our formal, like nobody has to listen to us anyway. So it feels uncomfortably close to an unagendized action to me. I know it's not that. It's more of a sense of the council. It's not an action, but given that, that that basically what we're giving is our thoughts on it anyway. It just feels close. I don't, this is just my reaction. It's not a fully thought through position. But I'm weary on it.
Dan, do you have any thoughts?
Is there a requirement for these things to be brought before us at a meeting, therefore agended before the meeting, in order for us to assign it and so forth? So that we can get started on looking at the project. And following forward from what Henry was saying, it seems to me that if we are allowed under the Brown Act and so forth to distribute the tasks of looking at these CDPs and so forth before the next meeting or before the next meeting agenda has to be out, that would in fact speed things up. But if we're required to bring it up at a meeting, we're a month out. And, you know, that's exactly what happened to this 24-0026 on the boundary modification. They wanted that by February 20th. They get it to us after our last meeting, and we're all going,
Okay.
I don't believe that we are required to assign reviews during a meeting. That has been a GMAC practice.
Right.
Yeah.
Don?
Yeah, I do think we definitely can sign these referrals prior to the meeting. If they come in, obviously, before a meeting. And in that case, you know, going back to Dave's presenting the possibility of some kind of an informal rendering of an opinion, I think that's even possible if nobody visits the site. Let's say a referral comes in, all the information is in the CDP, everything's there. So it could be assigned relatively soon prior to the meeting. And whoever's assigned to that would just have to read through the entire CDP. If there's a rush, for some odd reason, the county or the applicant or whatever, you know, needs to get our opinion on this, then I don't think we necessarily have to do a site visit and all the other steps that we normally take. That takes longer. As long as we have the entire CDP to review, I think we can, in these cases, where there is a very short time frame, we can render judgment as long as that's assigned to one or two members prior to the meeting, so they can fully review the matter.
Okay.
Again, without any site visit or additional time. So I do think that is an option.
Okay. Zach?
I agree on the need for efficiency. You know, that's those kinds of bureaucratic steps that are really frustrating, especially, you know, in this county. So I have no objections to what I've heard so far.
Okay. Robert?
Yeah, we've always been the eyes and ears of the county. I mean, I think we're a big help because we're on site for a lot of these projects. But it always seemed, in all the years I've been on GMAC, and when we had our Secretary Mary Mowbray, it always seemed so cumbersome to have to come to a meeting first, assign it, and then do it. And then what Henry said really struck me as interesting, because that's almost too efficient. That seems really a good idea, to have a rolling kind of a thing where, okay, you're next up. If for some reason you're out of town or this or that, the next person in line takes on the CDP. You review it as good as you can. It comes up on the agenda through Dave. And then if there's still further comment needed, that's where you hash it out at the meeting, right? And you can still, after the meeting, go to the site again or meet with the applicant again and do whatever's necessary, what comes out of that meeting, to give the county a full, I mean, he already does such a good job when he reviews CDPs and comes up with a doc and everything. That's way beyond what we ever did. But I think that would be efficient, what Henry and others have said now. To, before a meeting, get on it.
Okay. I just have, I have a couple thoughts. I agree that maybe, doing the rotational, person, that once we find out, we just assign that person. If they're not able, go to the next person. We obviously know that there's gonna be different quality of presentation. You got
Right.
the one end, David, where,
Standard.
Yeah.
and then there's other presentations beyond that. My one concern, and John, not to, point you out, but John made an interesting point tonight on the CalTrans project and the curve down there and that whole thing. I know that we also had comments from the public that we didn't take into consideration initially when they did the water, the project by Jay Baker. And then GMAC put in a comment, we'd like to see it widened so we could have a side or a pedestrian area there. We had the cell tower, which we didn't realize the comments that we would have from that, but we did. There was one project up on Iverson where we actually had 6 or 8 people here. I don't want to put us in a position to say, we kind of know how the public's going to react to a project. So I feel we have to definitely bring every project here for public comment, because we don't know how it's going to impact our neighbors, the community. And I have to admit, I'm not a long timer here. So there are things, and I don't drive a huge truck, so I don't know some of the obstacles that other people in the community would have.
But we're only talking about our homework.
Right, but what I'm saying is, but Dave was suggesting the idea, if there's something that's kind of almost like a rubber stamp that really doesn't appear controversial, that we just go ahead and offer an opinion. This doesn't appear to be controversial, and we support it. I would be against that. I think every item we get needs to come to us, because the public needs to be aware of what projects we're seeing and be able to offer input. But I do believe realistically that we could have a rotational system where, okay, Robert, you're up on, this next one or whatever. If the county is going to communicate in a timely manner with Dave and not come up on a Monday and say, okay, we need a comment by Wednesday. But if they're timely with their communication with Dave, we have the ability, because we all live here, to do a quick turnaround on a project and offer a reasonable presentation. And a lot of times we're able to get the applicant to attend as well. I would be in favor of doing the rotational system, but I think what I would want to see is the county be really responsive to our needs as well, and not look at a last minute request from us for a turnaround on the project, because I think it's important to get the community input as well.
Right, but it should be a requirement of the county to get it on their website, so we at least know what we're looking at. They have to do that, right?
They get on the website
Not
and they send us a notice, or send me a notice that it's posted, rather than the previous practice was it goes on the website. We don't know it's on the website. So somebody's kind of, getting in the habit of going to the website and checking.
Right.
Sort of a random thing.
We used to wait for them to send a notice to us through the mail, and that took a long time.
So what's the council's pleasure? Don?
Well, I just want to clarify something. Dave, you were not necessarily proposing that for some type of quick turnaround, that we would somehow send to the county our recommendation prior to having a meeting.
No, we never made that.
No.
So I think that takes care of your issue,
Right.
Kevin.
No, Kevin might.
I don't think we can do that.
Short change, but this group has been defined constitutional purpose is to create this venue. What I'm trying to do is enable us to provide this service, to be a part of this interaction in as expeditious a way as we can. And our previous practice of needing to make assignments during a meeting inevitably adds a month. And oftentimes it turns out to be net on the deadline. It's, 60 days late. And we're not helping anybody. We're not helping. I'm not suggesting in any way whatever that we alter our practice of taking whatever actions that we take here together in the public view with public participation ideally. What I'm suggesting is that, like the idea of the rolling assignments, we just make the assignments as quickly as we can. As soon as I know, I can push that out to the group. Mechanistically, one way to do is we either have a rolling assignment or we call for volunteers, but that means that people have to look at the email.
And
then we have to.
also that gets into some Brown Act questions as well. If we're putting the whole council on an email and soliciting responses, that's a council discussion that's happening on email outside of the public eye.
There's nothing on the merits of the application. It's just, okay, I'll take it. That's it.
That's just administration.
Yeah, I guess that's
the
yeah.
administrative issue, which I think.
I send you guys agendas.
Yeah.
Administratively, that doesn't bias the outcomes on the agenda.
Yeah, I guess if there's no back and forth,
Okay, Robert?
if there's no discussion of it, yeah.
On the other hand, look what happened to me last year in June, I think it was. And I feel remiss about this is, we did the McGrath dong ding on Old Coast Highway. It was a pretty straightforward thing. I mean, water service they had, sewer service they had, but there was a lot of issues. And I guess I was supposed to write the letter. I didn't pick it up until you sent out the minutes here that I was supposed to do that last year. But if you look at we're just an advisory council. Look what the county did. There were other people that did not send back comments, public agencies. They went ahead and they prepared the, the staff report. And what a heck of a staff report it was, but that's going forward. That neg deck or whatever, it ended up mitigated neg deck, it ended up being on that little manufacturer or little mobile home or trailer home or whatever it's gonna be there on Old Coast Highway.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, should I still write a lot of times we have after the fact permits to be handled. Should I write an after the fact letter of advisory council approval on that project?
Have they heard it yet? That's a good.
Yes, I saw your email. And it was 61 pages of wow.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
But I just remember the date of the planning commission. If
It's an amended,
if
they're
the
still gonna.
commission's already seen it, there's no point in wasting
Okay.
your time.
Okay, well,
That's the.
Well,
Like I say, I felt remiss.
quick question, I don't want to belabor this meeting. Once it is approved by the planning commission, doesn't it go to the board of supervisors for final approval?
No, the planning commission, there are two seated entities that deal with CDPs, right?
Right.
I don't know that there are any CDP applications that default to the board of supervisors, with the exception. There may be something, but in this case, it was going to the commission.
Okay, the reason I ask is because if there's an item being forwarded to the board of supervisors, then you could insert the comment from GMAC, but okay.
No, okay. Yeah.
I don't want to belabor the point. So is the council consensus? We don't need a formal motion. Is the council consensus to go to a rotational process? Okay,
Let's try it.
All right, do you mind if I administer it?
I would hope
I'm
so.
gonna start.
if
We all have a number on our sheets.
you're getting all the communication,
I've asked planning departments.
okay.
Alphabetical.
Okay,
Yeah,
everybody,
two more thoughts on this, if you don't mind.
only two?
Yes.
Okay,
There might be sub thoughts. Yeah, one would just be, that, you know, we do our best, and if it turns out we can't make a formal motion, then we still can punt it to the next meeting. Like, if it turns out we couldn't do a site visit, and after discussion, we realize we need one, then we just say we couldn't render a motion, and we move to the next meeting. And the other thought would be, then at least we can tell the county, like, reliably, if you get it to us by, you know, the Friday before our meeting, you'll hear back the day after our next meeting. Like, anytime between 3 days, you know, 5 days before meeting and after, then it's the following meeting.
Yeah,
Then they'll know.
that's part of, that is the point. If we have a protocol.
Yeah.
Whereby I get notice of a CDP referral or a B referral, or whatever the referral is. I've got a rotational list. I make the assignment, I get affirmative response back. That's important. Tell me you can do it or
Yeah.
not. Okay.
Mhm.
Then I'll write back to the county and say, okay, it's assigned and we're going to consider it on this date and you will get your responses the next day. It's really important for them. They want to
Yeah.
understand that, because most of the time we're not going to respond in their two-week window. It's just not going to happen.
It's just a math problem.
It's not how we work.
Yep.
But if we can get inside of 4 weeks, I think we've done the best we can, and
Yeah.
that's fair.
Sure.
And they
Yeah.
understand that. We're not the only MAC off their schedule.
Yeah.
So I want us to be the MAC that always.
And then we're creating a deadline for them too, of saying,
Correct.
if you get it by this date, you'll hear back,
Yeah.
and if you don't, then
They
it's
have
the
to
next
be
month.
responsive to us as well. So, hang on, did you have your second point?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, with the understanding that there are gonna be some write-ups, recommendations that are gonna be a lot more complex, then, yeah, we think this is a good idea.
Oh, well, yes, of course, like they all are. And so, for example, if somebody gets an assignment of one of those, big, hairy, crazy ball, the person who gets it, because they're on rotation, may take a look at it and say, I just don't have time to read 500 pages of this referral and deal with this hairball. I can't, I need to pass.
No, I'm talking about,
But-
after we've made a motion, we voted on it, and there are ones that we've done that have had a lot of conditional
Oh, yeah.
response.
Sure, yeah, but that is, I can't change that
Yeah.
aspect of it.
None of us can, that's just the way it is. I'm just saying, understand that we may not always be able to get to them in 2 days.
Okay. That I need to know from the people who are doing it. We have our meeting, we consider the CDP part of the action. I'll ask the question, when can the responsible viewers render their comments and transcripts?
Yeah.
And I'll give these guys a heads up. What I'm trying to do is have a very active line of communication, so the staff planner knows when they're gonna get their stuff. So they're on the hook, to write the staff report on schedule.
Yeah.
And I'd like us to be there on time. That's my.
One thing that we do need to probably keep in mind with this whole process is that whoever is assigned to it, if you cannot produce the review of the project prior to the agenda going out, you need to let David know, or whoever, mine's David. You need to let the secretary know or the chair know, so we don't add it to the agenda. If you cannot do a review on it, then we definitely do not want to put it on the agenda. So we need to know prior to the agenda being posted, whether or not you're able to complete the review of that CDP or CDPM or whatever. Does that seem reasonable?
I mean, I would say, if it goes on the agenda and when we get to discussion, we don't actually have enough to render a motion, we're gonna have to punt it. It's not the end of the world. Like,
No, but it looks embarrassing, because if we post it as being on the agenda, and if the public comes and
True.
sits here in our meeting and we say, oh, by the way, we pulled the item.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good for us. So we want to make sure that we're responsive to the applicant, to the people in the audience, and to the council.
yeah, yep, That's reasonable.
So are we good? Dave, do you have enough to communicate back with the county?
I
Probably
will.
more than enough?
Actually, I don't really want to tell them a whole lot about how we organize and operate.
No, just tell them what
I'll
we
do
need
is
from them.
Heard it, and yes, I'll tell them we need to continue to give me notice immediately upon posting so that we can do our best to turn around for them. This is our game.
Yeah, they don't need our
This is
internal operation.
Yeah.
No, unless they ask.
Just as long as they know what their deadline is.
Right.
The referrals always come with a deadline.
No, I'm saying, like,
What I'll do is I'll tell them, hey, we can't hit your deadline, but this is what we can do.
well, but I would love for them to know, so long as it's the Friday before our meeting, you should get a response at the next meeting. And if you come to us the Tuesday before our meeting, you're not gonna get a response until it's gonna be a month later.
That's interesting. Let's say there is one thing I would like to tell the county aside from, yeah, we got it. We're gonna do our best to comply. What's the sense of agree? What is your tolerance for getting a referral? 1 week before a meeting of ours, 2 weeks before, 3 weeks? Because really, we're all volunteer to develop lives. Some of these things are really.
Some of
picky
us
and
have
easy.
jobs.
But some of them, like these hairballs, they take some time, we gotta fit it in.
Right.
And maybe we should be, why don't we tell the county, look, guys, we appreciate what you gotta do, but since we're a volunteer group and we all got lives, don't give us a referral any less than 2 weeks, 3 weeks, let's pick a number before you need it, because we're gonna need time to calendar this stuff. Do we tell them our tolerances?
I mean,
The way my life's going right now, I would say a week to 10 days. We should
We
have.
need at least a week to 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think-
fair enough.
I think 2 weeks is a good buffer,
That's even better.
like a general buffer, it's
Alright.
smacked out, it's half the month, I mean.
Then I'll communicate that.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
What,
We're the two, well, you work too, right?
yeah, but I'm just trying to think from their perspective, if we tell them 2 weeks, we at least 2 weeks notice before the meeting. So then anything that comes in 10 days before a meeting, they're not gonna hear back for a month plus 10 days.
Right, I'll tell them, hey, guys, you didn't give us enough time to make an assignment and do the work. So sorry.
Yeah, I
One of
mean,
the things they're asking me to do is immediately upon receipt, referral, I push it out to us, get an assignment, and then I tell them when we're gonna consider their item. And whether we'll meet their deadline or whether we have a different date. If it turns out that they hit us too late, I'm gonna tell them, hey, guys, we just don't have time for this. It's gonna take longer. So this is an interesting threshold question. And I want them to respect it.
yeah, but they're right, if it's a boundary line adjustment, they,
Okay, if there's one that I can take up and I'm not even gonna bother everybody, I'll just tell you, I'm gonna do this one fast, then I'll do that. But oftentimes, if it goes into the rotation assignment, they have to respect it. We just can't turn around when they want it.
Well, and the other thing that we have to keep in consideration here is that there may be more than one CDP. So now we're looking at
Oh, yeah.
2 people or 3 council members that are involved in this. So, yeah, it's gonna be very critical.
I do want,
Dan?
Yeah, that said, there are also some CDPs that might require 2 people to work on.
Mhm.
I mean, we have seen that.
That's been our practice, is 2 people. So what's the appetite of the group? If we assign on the rotation, is it 1 or 2 people?
Try for 2. I would always think.
Well, if you add 2, you're pretty much guaranteed to at least have 1 that could move forward with it, if not 2, so.
All right.
yeah, and then I do wonder whether, rather than responding immediately to say, no, you only gave us 10 days, we're not gonna be able to get to it. Maybe it makes sense to wait to hear back from the volunteer, or not volunteer, the assignee,
Fair enough.
who can then say like,
Okay.
yes, I can get to this and fast, or like, yes, I can get to this, but it's gonna take.
Yeah, it might be a simpler review.
Yeah.
Like a boundary line adjustment is a lot easier than some of the other ones. So, yeah, I
Okay.
guess it's
That makes
more on a
sense.
case by case basis.
But I'll wait for the confirmation of the assignment received and the feedback there before I respond to.
And that's an internal thing. So if we say 2 weeks, but we know that the person who's coming up is really quick or it's an easy CDP, then yeah, we could take it.
But ultimately, we're bringing everything we're doing to a meeting like this, to
Right.
have a conversation.
Yeah.
So that becomes that's our action.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
So one last part of that. So I'm looking for a show of hands. Who wants to be I'm out of town in March and April, so.
Yeah.
So is there someone who wants to be first up?
I mean, I think Dave's suggestion was just going based on the numbers, but
Yeah, our sheets have assignments. I can do that, or
Okay, so you want to be the first one that you contact to review the CDP?
I'm sorry. My
Well,
number-
when you get the notice, we're gonna assign someone, right?
I'm gonna get a notice from the county.
Right. Are you the first one?
I'm gonna make the first, yes, I'm gonna go to the list. I'm gonna see who's on the list next. Send 2 people.
Okay.
let me know. You will be covered on that since you're the dude.
So much, okay, so the first CDP that we get with this new format,
Mhm.
you and one other person will be the first ones up in March?
are you seat number 1?
That's
I am
what
not.
I'm trying to determine rather than everybody wondering who reads our stuff.
I don't know what the seat numbers are, but if that.
We can do it alphabetically.
If that, okay, fine, I'll do it by alphabet.
Alphabet is what.
Here we go. Rotation by alphabet.
I think it made a good decision because he's gonna be the one who's gonna be dealing with all of that. If he's the first one, I guess, he's gonna develop
Yeah.
a procedure that works good for us.
I'd also like the record to show that I don't open my wife's emails. So it's a bad practice to have, so I'm going to make a special ringtone for your email so that all the junk I get, I'll actually. I know, but
But
that,
it's,
she's the number 1, so that means I don't,
Okay.
there's no other.
All right,
oversight.
So, I will leave it in your capable hands to
Even once from his wife.
to develop the list, the rotational list.
Okay.
And I will put it in Robert's capable hands, because I won't be here for the April meeting.
One somewhere, that's right, okay. We'll see if there's any CDPs to begin with.
It's all about timing. Okay, I think, are we? Yeah,
Was Zach's suggestion that spouses be CC'd on the assignment email?
No, I was suggesting that spouses being on the top tier of communication, I'm that bad at emails that I don't even pay attention to my wife's emails.
okay, that brings up an issue. Right now, we have one council member that is not available to do CDPs. He is technically an alternate until we get to a meeting.
But
And that person's not available, then he sits in as a regular. So can he be part of the
Rotation.
yeah,
rotation?
yeah, the only thing he can't do is vote if we have a
Right.
full vote.
But he can be, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
fine
Okay,
with
this
that.
is a non-defined issue in the bylaws. So
Okay,
I think we have.
Yeah.
Zachary, if you're willing to.
so then add Zachary to the list, and I would say at this point, do not add Councilmember Finley to the list right now until
So she says it's back.
she's able to return.
Very well.
Okay. Any other comments on this item?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, committee reports. Robert, we're gonna, because we've already talked about
Flower Park, yeah.
Flower Park, so we're gonna go down to CalTrans SR1 Gualala Downtown Enhancement Project. Spock and Mayor, do you have a report?
Yeah, I think
Honestly, I've just been focused on the Bower Park stuff. I've been like total
And thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really good stuff. I have a very brief report. I spoke with Julie Barrett, who's the MCOG executive director, a couple days ago. She's been struggling to run to ground the landscaping maintenance issue. Landscaping in this project has been something that a lot of people feel very strongly about. We understood though from the beginning, the Achilles heel was CalTrans District 1's requirement that for landscaping to be installed as part of the project, there would have to be a local agency that would take on maintenance. And that has not occurred. Ms. Barrett attempted multiple times to work with the county DOT to figure out how the county might step into that role. And the bottom line is that absent a dedicated source of funding, such as a business improvement district, which would require a vote of all the property owners along the highway stretch, certainly those affected by landscaping, the county is in no position to take on a landscape, perpetual landscaping committee. And so absent that or another special district or some other entity stepping into that breach, landscaping will not be installed as part of the enhancement project. However, those landscape areas are very likely to be employed to deal with runoff. There are a few opportunities in this very narrow right of way to deal with surface release runoff off the highway. And it's not unlikely, and certainly down at the bottom in front of the community center and very possibly at the top, seascape, that unpaved areas within the right of way would be used for some form of runoff treatment. Again, this is means and methods and design details that Ms. Barrett did not have. And when I called the current project manager, Katie Everett, I left voicemail, but didn't get a response. But anyway, bottom line is no landscaping will be installed as part of the project. Other than that, the project is on schedule. Right-of-way negotiations are continuing. The Coastal Commission will consider the coastal development permit for the project in the next several months. We'll likely receive some form of notice for that public meeting. And so those who have an interest can attend whatever manner.
Yeah, so that's no median landscaping, right?
No peripheral or median landscaping.
No peripheral landscaping?
Because the CalTrans will not maintain landscaping that's put inside the state right of way on this project. They won't do it. Typically what happens, you see, here's an example. State highways through the city. The state highway goes right through the middle of the city, and there's a streetscape enhancement that's built by the state. There's all kinds of landscaping in it. Well, that's predicated upon the city taking on the perpetual responsibility to maintain that landscape. The local jurisdiction here is the county of Montecito, which, as a matter of general practice, doesn't do landscaping on any road. And in order for them to do landscaping as an exception, there would have to be a dedicated source of funding for that landscaping undertaking, and there is not here.
So this is the first we've heard about there being a threat to the peripheral landscaping. This was always about in the median. That was what, that had been a complaint that they had said they were unwilling to maintain in the median landscaping. But there's never been a discussion of there not being the peripheral landscaping that was core to this project.
I have a different impression than you do, Henry. This has been a topic of repeated conversation, perhaps not sufficiently clearly discussed, but it has been discussed. This topic has come up. I know that I've mentioned it here in this context several times. It has always been the case when we've talked about who's going to maintain the landscaping. That's the landscaping writ large, outside and inside the roadway. It's been a part of this conversation, but again, I don't have that. I don't have to change that outcome.
Yeah, the discussion at the start of this, when there was back and forth about landscaping, was about the fact that the county refused to maintain in the median landscape. The county at that time had not objected in any way to the peripheral landscape. That was always core to the project. The arguments that were had before were about the median landscape, because they had said that that was hazardous and that county employees were not going to maintain median landscape. But the peripheral landscaping, that was at the start uncontroversial.
I have a different impression than you do.
Okay.
I've already explained it. We don't have to go around and around, but I get it that there's a misunderstanding. But the bottom line nevertheless is this. CalTrans will not install landscaping as part of this project because there is no public agency that is prepared to take on a perpetual commitment to maintain their landscaping.
Yeah, that's just totally unacceptable by the county.
Okay. Don?
So I presume, well, maybe I shouldn't presume, but is it possible then for private property owners along the CalTrans right of way to landscape their property that abuts up against the right of way?
But not in the right of way.
Not in the right of way, no.
Yeah, I think it's, well, definitely it's possible for private landowners to landscape their property outside of the right of way. Landscaping inside the right of way would be a negotiation with CalTrans. And I don't know where those are standing. I've asked again to talk with Katie Everett, because one of the questions that I have with her is, well, what about working with the community center, which has already expressed a willingness to take on maintenance? My understanding is that negotiation will be part of a right of way discussion. And then possibly even involving an encouragement permit. But again, I don't have an answer to that question. I don't think it's impossible. I just don't have an answer.
Okay. Any other questions for Dave before we open it up to the public? Hearing none. John?
Thank you. Back in our meetings.
Shut the microphone.
Back in our meetings, when we had discussions about landscaping, Hamling was courteous enough to work with us on that, and this is pretty far into our decision-making process as a community and looking at CalTrans, what we really wanted. And Frank asked the question, do you really want landscaping? And most of us said, no, we want to do our own. We want to make our own landscaping as to our businesses and stuff work for us, not something that's down the street there. And the other part of that is, if you go to that point, you kind of look at, well, are the sidewalks most important right there? Or can they be adjusted to meander into business areas and back out? Now, if there's crosswalks, no. But if those crosswalks are at strategic points and the sidewalks can come by, that's great. So, you know, I don't think this plan is set in stone yet, but I think, you know, they're looking at what they have to do, what they may do. And I believe that many of the businesses down the street would rather do their own landscaping and not have CalTrans run a specific thing out onto their property.
Okay. Good, thank you. Any other?
As a private citizen, it also brings up the lighting issue, and we've talked about that in the past, how that got kind of left out of the project, but
That too, it's very similar. Private can do that.
if that's what happens, that it kind of gets pushed right up against the back of the sidewalk, that's where the property owner becomes responsible to do or not do landscaping. I hope everybody does landscape, but maybe they can incorporate the lighting back in the sidewalk.
Dan?
We've got one more public comment.
Corinne.
Maybe having a hard time tracking the conversation. I know you guys are all super familiar with it. I have hesitation about the businesses being in charge of their own landscaping, because that's a do or don't on their own authority. And I think there's going to be a lot of benefit to the downtown renovation with Caltrans, and I think that the landscaping would be massively beneficial. Is there any possibility? Is that what we're discussing? Is there like a possibility to somehow get that to happen, or it just can't happen? I don't understand quite, because I heard that Caltrans isn't going to do it, right? So what is it that we're discussing?
This item is more of just an informational item being shared by the committee that is working on the streetscape project. So that's what Councilmember Spock shared with us this evening, the update from Caltrans. And we're kind of weighing in on this information and providing input to him.
So is there a possibility that this input could affect whether Caltrans does landscaping or not?
It appears that the decision right now is to not do landscaping, but that does not preclude the community from weighing in and saying that they would like to see landscaping done in some form. But right now, as far as us, this is more of an information item right now. And it's not something that we're really prepared, because we would need to notice the public if we're going to have input and a final decision by GMAC in which way we go, whether it's landscaping or not, and requiring the businesses to do that. So that would really need to take a lot of public input as well. And so we decided to move forward with that. We would do so, and probably in coordination with Caltrans. But right now, this is more of an information item.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Bring it back. Dan?
Yeah, one thing you also get involved with when you're landscaping, public right of way and roadway adjacent landscaping is liability issues. And I know in Sacramento, they required the city plants trees between the sidewalk and the roadway. And if that tree, which is on city property, dropped a branch on your car, I had that happen. The city says, no, we're not covering you for that. That's your problem and your insurance company's problem. There are, yeah, I know it's a city-owned tree, but they hold absolutely no liability. They require property owners to have trees in front of their houses because Sacramento. And you have to have 2 trees in your front yard. They'll provide the trees, but if that tree causes any damage, hey, you own the property there. So these are things to think about when you're roadway adjacent landscaping.
Don?
Actually, I'm not going to make any comment. I think it is what it is at this point. I don't want to extend this conversation.
Zach, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, my only thought is, I know that there are some coming from a community that had mow strips and public right-of-way areas that, even though the city put in trees and grass and everything, they required the property owners to maintain them. And if the property owner didn't maintain it, they would get sent a notice. And if they didn't maintain it, then they would be fined for not maintaining it. That's part of their responsibility of their frontage to their property. But it appears to me right now that the Caltrans is moving forward with the idea of not having landscaping there. There are many extenuating circumstances. One, water. We're short of water anyway, and now you're asking the property owners and the water company to put the bill and provide the service to water landscaping. That maybe the property owner may not want to do that, and that may be an added cost to them that they may not want to incur. And then if it's not maintained, then and you have a different issue with the county and code enforcement. So, I think if the council's, decision, I think we just let, David and Henry keep getting this information, and if there's any further information regarding the landscaping, and Henry, you as a member of the project or the committee can definitely contact them and get more information regarding the landscaping as well and bring it back to the April meeting. But I think right now we're not in a position to make any type of recommendations this evening. We need to agendize that and get the public here to weigh in on the idea of landscaping. This is more of an information item. I know.
Yeah.
John, real quick, because we're running out of time.
Real brief here. If this in fact comes to fruition for CalTrans and we're, let's say, stuck with it, what will it help us with for the streetscape? What can it contribute to the streetscape if we lose it? And I'm looking at space. There's more space in the street. If we're not having landscaping strips, is this something that might provide parking on one side of the street? I don't know.
Okay, guys, Robert, hang on, are we done with this item?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me just define time. No, I'm not aware of any fundamental changes in the project.
Yeah.
It's pretty good to look at. And
Okay. Thank you. Let's move forward. I definitely am not gonna report on anything on the Gualala Community Center. David, the local coastal program, do you have anything?
yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys are on the distribution list for GRI and Grassroots Institute to get stuff from them. So the next, we've been doing these meetings, thank you very much. Doing updates on the local coastal program update, which is great. They're doing a good job with that. The next one is on the 20th of March at 3 to 5 p.m. It's going to be a Zoom teleconference. Hopefully you guys have all got the notices. This time up, at the last meeting, Peter McNamee had begun an exercise of looking at particular locations, starting up in Westport and marching south on LCP related issues related to particular locales like Westport or Albion or whatever. And then he stopped, didn't get to Gualala. We all were saying, oh no, what about Gualala? Anyway, he's going to talk about the South Coast at this next meeting. So for those that are curious about how Peter is computing our neck of the woods, he'll be showing those cards. Anyway, again, the 20th, 3 to 5 p.m. Let me know if you don't have the link. I'll forward the notice to you. Yes.
Dave, I suggest you just forward it to me.
All right, I'll get it.
Without people asking.
Okay, please forward that to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you post that on the website as well?
I could, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that council knows that a lot of the public doesn't know what's going on. We never do. There's the communication starting. They're starting to feel the results of where we are going. So developing a vision, especially for the local folks and the applicants. Those items need to be brought to us for the forum in this community.
Right.
And if we don't get from the consultant, and we can't look at them and understand them and find them to make decisions on, then I think county.
Thank you. Economic development, Robert, do you have anything?
No, I do. Present.
The only thing I have to add is I reached out to Vincent Mendocino again to see what the status of the entryway, the gateway sign is, and haven't heard from them, but that's the only thing that's pending with that. Website, social media, telecommunications, community broadband access, Don?
Yeah, just real briefly, I've made some updates to the website and mainly involving there's some governmental changes that obviously have occurred since the elections. And then I'm in contact now with a consultant that hopefully will help me get over the hump in terms of a couple issues that are remaining that I really I need some help on in order to really wrap it up the way I feel it, that we would like the design to be.
I really appreciate what you're doing. It's looking better and working better all the time, so thank you.
Is this a cost that we're going to incur as a council? And as a
Not necessarily. No.
Okay. With that being said,
I kind of figure there's no money for it anyways.
you said we got it. Okay, anyway.
Do we really have $5,000?
We can't enter into contracts.
You could, but you could ask PBS to do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If there's a bid, you can submit it and have them.
Have them look at it and because we're improving our informational outreach to the community.
That's one of our missions.
Yeah, so I think that that's a reasonable cost, and I think if we get a bid to do that, send that to the county, I have a feeling that county building and planning, that they would be more than happy to accommodate us in updating our website so it provides our community with the best information possible.
Yeah, and the reality is if we don't, manage our own website, the county has to do it. I mean, they would have to put notices because there are other MACs that don't have a website. So the county has to put notices about meetings and everything. They have to do it. So we relieve them of all that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And
so there is a benefit to the county, in my mind, if they invest a little bit
right
on the website.
And thank you. I'll echo what David said. Thank you for all that you've done on that. Anything else on that?
No, that's it.
Okay. Item 11.1. Didn't we do this?
No, this is a formal act.
Because it wasn't agenda.
We tried like 6 times, but here we go.
11.
Again.
Reimbursement to Don Hess for payment of the domain name invoice. Recommended action. Discuss, I think we've discussed it, and approve request for reimbursement.
I move that we pay Don.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by
Do
Henry.
we have an invoice, an updated invoice though? Isn't there a little interest on it, I think?
There's no interest in carrying the city further.
Okay, we have a motion
To recuse myself at this vote.
I think I lost.
I think we do.
Okay, I got this.
At what point did I lose control? We have a motion by Henry, second by Dan.
Okay.
Don's watching his watch. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great. Council member comments. I only have one. I'm gonna be gone from April 10th or from March 10th to April 12th. So the next meeting will be in the good hands of Robert. So please, as you prepare the agenda, if you have any things that you'd like to add,
Work with Dave on that.
work with Robert. With that being said, Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I
Dan?
move we adjourn.
Hang on, comment. We got a comment.
Sorry, I was looking up.
In addition to Kevin being gone, for terms of, for regards to distributing CDPs to look at stuff, I will be out of the country from April 8th until May 1st.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion. Anybody else going on vacation? No? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mike, by Henry, second by the whole group. All those in favor, we're done.
Aye.
Henry, you moved?
Yeah.
And we're done at 8:09.